Chapter 1. Uzumaki Naruto is a smart boy. It is a fact that he acknowledges and understands, because that's what everyone tells him, so it must be true. Tsukimi, the orphanage matron, is the one who tells him this the most. She is different from other people because she has deep lines on her face and her hair is gray. When he asks her why that is, she tells him that it's because when people get very old, they start showing signs of aging. The old woman is nice. She gives him and the other kids sweets sometimes when they're good, but sometimes has difficulty getting all of them to bed. But not all adults are like she is, Naruto notices. Sometimes there is an old man that people call Hokage-sama, even though he isn't Hokage anymore, and he stops by to see how the older kids who became Genin are doing. He seems nice, but he looks at Naruto strangely, tells him that he was a friend of Naruto's parents, but won't actually say their names when Naruto asks. Politely, even. Sometimes. Naruto ignores this, however. If the old fart doesn't have anything good to tell him, then Naruto isn't going to listen. So because the retired, a word he learned from Tsukimi-bachan, Hokage wouldn't teach him anything, and the Genin kids always ignore him, he tried rummaging through the old books that the orphanage had to find anything that could help. He eventually finds a discarded and wrecked book that one of the academy students threw away, and after skimming through the pages that weren't destroyed, he finds something called the leaf-sticking exercise. He wants to learn it. Apparently, chakra control is something that people need to learn in order to be a shinobi, and Naruto desperately wants to be one. His drive for it was quite simple. One day, when Tsukimi-bachan's back was turned, an older boy snatched a locket from a girl that was Naruto's age. The girl cried and begged him to give it back, saying that it was the only thing that she owned that had her parents' faces in it. Naruto didn't know he could get so angry, but he did and punched the older boy in the face, just like the Genin kids punched the dummies outside. The boy dropped the locket and started crying louder than the girl, whining for Tsukimi-bachan at the top of his lungs, and Naruto is so completely satisfied with the hug he gets for returning the girl's locket that it makes the scolding he gets utterly worth it. It had been so thrilling, and it was then that Naruto decided he was going to be a shinobi, even if he didn't understand which he liked more between fighting and the girl's hug. The older boy hasn't tried picking on anyone since. Disregarding his motive for a moment, he still needs permission to go out. Tsukimi-bachan, Naruto looks up at the matron. She seems to be in a good mood today. Yes, Naruto-kun. She gives her usual smile. Can I go outside to the trees? Naruto pleads. It is one of his favorite things to do because he always gets to see the shinobi kids training and jumping from tree to tree, even though that isn't what he's going outside for this time. Tsukimi sighs, but her smile doesn't go away. Another thing that confuses him. You can, Naruto-kun, but you have to promise me something. Promise what? Naruto's brow furrows. Be back before the sun is down, or I'll have to call the shinobi to come get you. Tsukimi looks down at him in a way that said that he probably shouldn't disobey. I promise. Naruto nods resolutely. Tsukimi just manages to ruffle his hair before running off. Naruto doesn't bother to hide his grin. He finally gets to train. Hatake Kakashi is a weary shinobi. Young but weary. It is a fact that he acknowledges and understands, because it means that the people around him won't shut up about him needing some time off. During and after the Third Shinobi World War, Kakashi had what was either a slew of bad luck, or the gods had decided fuck this person in particular. His first friend had died saving their teammate, giving him a gift that no amount of money or gold could equate to. And then he was forced to kill said teammate for the sake of keeping Konoha safe. The death of his much-loved sensei followed, taking with him the woman that he considered an older sister. Things had not been looking up for him at that point, but he endured. After the Kyuubi attack, Sandaime-sama delegated the next Hokage to be Tsunade. Kakashi distinctly remembers the shouting match that followed this decision, but Tsunade-sama eventually capitulated and became the Go-Dame Hokage. She is a good Hokage, Kakashi knows, if a little bit temperamental. Her actions regarding Kumo's attempt to kidnap the Hyuga heiress was something that cemented his faith in her as a leader. She had been utterly ruthless with them. They had knowingly used Konoha's goodwill against them and tested the waters too deep. They threatened war against Konoha for killing their ambassador/kidnapper, to which Tsunade retorted that they had already taken on the world 3 times now, and if Kumo wanted to fight, they wouldn't have a village to fight for afterwards. She could not be cowed with threats, and she knew they could not be defeated right now. Kimogakure was sent home with their tails between their legs and their reputation in tatters. Kakashi is vindicatively pleased by this. Not only does it improve Konoha's standing in the eyes of non-shinobi in terms of strength and sense of justice, but a guiltless little girl gets to keep her livelihood and her family remains unbroken. Family is something that he appreciates greatly. Kakashi thinks privately that recent ally Sunagakure is impressed with Tsunade's attitude as well, made evident by the large jug of very expensive sake sent to her by the Kazekage as a token of goodwill. It's been 5 long years since that night the Kyuubi appeared. Things aren't getting worse for him, but despite some notable moments, they aren't really getting much better either. He is an ANBU still, rising to captaincy since being placed here by his sensei before his passing. And everything is a blur these days. Wake up, eat, mission, come home, eat, shower, sleep. It is routine and boring, but he doesn't know what else to do. He doesn't have experience with other matters like friendship and love. He takes notice of women and wonders what it would be like to have a wife, but he isn't bold enough with them to make an advance. He tries to ignore his regular woes, however, and focuses on his duty. He is still on patrol after all. It wouldn't do well to have something bad happen under his watch. He has some attachment to his own credibility after all. Lost in his own thoughts, he unintentionally meanders into Riverside Park. Kakashi sees a boy with eyes and hair like Obito's. The spiky locks are a bit longer though, looking more like sensei. His face looks a bit more focused than Obito's ever did around that age. The boy is carrying a tattered book under one arm and a water bottle in the other. He is whimsically intrigued and tries to catch his scent on the wind to see if the boy was related to anyone he knew. And he pauses. The boy's looks are familiar, but the scent is more so. He knows this scent like the back of his hand, and his mind blanks in conflict with joy and shame. This boy looks nothing like the two who sired him, but there is no question that he is theirs. Genes were funny sometimes, but this boy was meant to be his family. Kakashi often wonders what it might have been like. Him being the older brother, Sensei being the long-suffering but stern father, and Kushina, the fiery and embarrassing but loving and effective mother. Sarutobi told him that Naruto was dead. Sarutobi was about to be dead. Uchiha Madara is older than dirt. It is a fact that he acknowledges and understands, because it means that his time is running out. He had lived far longer than any normal human being should be conceivably possible to do, even the Uzumaki. After the battle with Hashirama in the valley and the subsequent faking of his death, he'd spent decades cultivating the DNA that he'd taken in an attempt to prolong his life and achieve the power that the stone tablet spoke of. But Madara had not been idle. In between his experiments with Hashirama's chakra and flesh, he'd been out in the world, trying to remember why he fought to bring peace to the war-torn lands of the elemental nations. And the answer came to him after many years, in the form of a stubborn, crimson-haired woman and the equally fiery child she bore him. His natural protective instincts brought themselves to the surface of his mind with a vengeance. After all, the daughter of Uchiha Madara would be hunted until her last days. With some advice from his new wife, he developed a Juinjutsu to be placed on Kushina's heart, which would seal away her Uchiha power before it could surface. Her once black hair turned as red as her mother's, and her eyes violet. And so it was that Uchiha Kushina became Uzumaki Kushina, whose chakra was still so abnormally strong that Konoha decided that their previous Jinchuriki had run its course, and it was time to replace her with someone younger and more powerful. Madara's opinion of Konoha had lowered further than he thought it could be at this point, but at least new Kushina would be kept safe. He had already been old by the time Kushina was born, and his dear wife Haruka's health had been failing. And at least this way he could still watch Kushina from the shadows. His plan went back into motion, but he always kept his eyes on Konoha. Kushina only ever knew him as Ota-san, so she remained ignorant for the most part about her heritage. Haruka sent a message to Kushina telling her that Madara had passed away peacefully in his sleep a year after her departure. She left out his actual name, but the stone on his empty grave read Uzumaki Izuna. He hoped his brother didn't mind, but knew that Izuna would have liked Haruka, even if he wouldn't like the rest of the Uzumaki. Over time, Madara's bitterness for the shinobi world started to come back. Everywhere he looked, there was some form of misery to be found. His wife was falling incurably ill, the side effect of being treated with infected tools after a scuffle with some IWA shinobi prodding Yuzu's borders. Smaller nations suffered, with orphans created by selfish larger nations. Around every corner of the world, the shinobi nations caused pain. Haruka's death had only made Madara accelerate his plans. By then he had awakened the Rinnegan and summoned the Geto Mazo before he transplanted the eyes into an Uzumaki orphan whose own chakra would sustain the eyes, whilst keeping a spare eye on a boy who held greater potential than even Namikaze Minato or the Sandaime Hokage. As time passed and Obito was in his clutches, he entrusted Kurozetsu and Obito to enact the plan and once again faked his death by using Izanagi, programmed to bring him back after 5 years. After transplanting his original eyes back into himself, he spent some time evaluating the changes to the world, and one single, glaring fact stood out and made Madara's blood boil. Kushina is dead. She and her husband died after Obito ripped the Kyuubi out of her, which told Madara something else, that Kushina had also been pregnant. But apparently, Kushina had sensed that Madara didn't know she was capable of, and before the Yondaime could seal away the Kyuubi into their newborn son, she teleported it away with an advanced Jikuken ninjutsu that took the full remainder of her chakra and life force to do, but left the child without any Kyuubi sealed in him. Kushina would have died anyway with the Kyuubi ripped out of her, but Madara admired that even on the brink of death, Kushina would not let her son be used for Konoha's greater good. Sacrifices needed to be made, but Konoha's reliance on the bijou to maintain the imaginary balance of power was pure weakness. As much as he hated the fact that Kushina was dead, it may very well have been the best decision. If she had sealed the Kyuubi back into herself, she wouldn't have been able to avoid attention from village officials that would attempt to weaponize her. It would have painted a huge target on her back for not only spiteful villagers, but other greedy nations. Minato had died too in a combination of chakra exhaustion and giant claw through the stomach, but Madara didn't mourn the man. Such loyalty to a place like Konoha was enough for Madara to dislike him, and with his grandson now free of the Minato's influence, the boy could be taught to think for himself like a true Uchiha should. Madara didn't doubt that Minato would have tried to get Naruto into the trap of village above all and be self-sacrificial. Madara sighed and stood up, his ancient bones actually creaking as he did so. He knew he didn't have much time left and Hashirama's DNA would only support him for so long. But he could at least spend his last years raising his grandson and turning him into every bit the legend Madara himself was. He would make sure of it. Spiky black hair with a slight blue tint. Check. Charcoal black eyes and a fair but healthy skin tone. Check. Unnaturally powerful chakra and abnormally large reserves. Check. This was definitely his grandson. If it weren't for a DNA test or being able to sense the chakra similarities, no one would have guessed he was Kushina or Minato's son too. The resemblance between Naruto and a young Madara was startling. If he were to hazard a guess, he would say that Naruto as a 5-year-old had as much chakra as Madara himself did at almost 8. Something easily attributed to his Uzumaki genes combined with the Uchiha. Taking a closer look, he saw that the boy was sitting underneath a tree by the artificial extension of Naka River that ran through Konoha from one side to another. This area was particularly quiet regarding civilian foot traffic, which was probably why Naruto chose it for the little chakra control exercise he was doing. It didn't surprise him that such a serene place could be found in Konoha. It was a very large village, and there were even a few large parks that could be mistaken as forests within the walls. A leaf was stuck to his forehead. By the bored look on the boy's face, Madara could tell that Naruto had been there a while and had most likely mastered the exercise not long ago. He inwardly praised the patience it took. With reserves like Naruto's, he'd probably been out for hours. Still, that control would remain with him for the rest of his life. Madara also reasoned that now that Naruto had mastered the exercise, he grew bored with nothing else to occupy him. He looks up to the sky. Perfect. It's only midday, giving Madara the opportunity to confront the boy and get the ball rolling. He stepped out of the trees, purposefully brushing his legs against a bush to get the boy's attention. Sure enough, Naruto looked his way and eyed him with all the suspicion a 5-year-old could muster. Hello, child. Madara greets in his aged baritone, as though it isn't strange for an old man in a cloak to be approaching a young boy. Hello. Naruto replied politely, but still suspicious. I noticed that you were practicing chakra control while out on my walk. Are you training to become a shinobi? Madara asked, spinning a conversation as a typical old man would. Yeah. Naruto seemed to relax, and a bit of excitement entered his expression. I can stick a leaf to my forehead now. Very impressive for someone your age. Madara commended. How long did it take you? I dunno, Naruto shrugs boredly. But it was ages. I came out when I woke up. How did you learn the leaf-sticking exercise? You have to be much older to join the academy. Madara was genuinely a bit curious. I read it in an old book at the orphanage. Naruto reveals, looking proud, but the look was replaced with an annoyed frown. The rest of the book was all wrecked though. I don't know what to do now. Madara's lips twitched. So that was why he was looking so bored earlier. You must be good at reading then, he asks conversationally. Naruto nods, expression proud. Yeah, Tsukimi-bachan lets me go early since the other kids can't read so well yet. The woes of advancing faster than your peers. Prodigies often knew it too well. You know, I could teach you something too. Madara offers slyly. Like what? Naruto walks up to him, reservations and suspicion temporarily forgotten. Madara nearly smiles, wondering if he had ever been this trusting as a child. Well, I could teach you some more chakra control. I was a shinobi once too, you know. A strong one. Madara reveals. Really? Naruto seemed doubtful, most likely thinking an old man couldn't really be strong. How about we make a deal? If you can master this new exercise before the day is up, I'll come back and teach you ninjutsu tomorrow. Naruto is almost visibly vibrating in excitement. Madara went into an explanation about what the tree climbing exercise was, along with a quick demonstration. Naruto soaked up everything the old man had to say, and just before he began his own attempts at the exercise, he poses a question. Hey G-san, what's your name? It's polite to give your name first. The old man chastised mildly. Naruto looked a bit embarrassed at the reprimand, but spoke up. I'm Uzumaki Naruto. Well, Naruto, you can call me Madara. Now get to it. The day won't last forever. As Naruto sped up the tree and made it a not-so-astonishing 3 steps up before falling flat on his back, Madara thought that things had gone better than he could have expected them to. In time, he would reveal the truth to Naruto about his heritage, but for now... Oof. Naruto wheezed again after failing. He wouldn't mind a few more days like this before he died again. They were few and far in between in his life. Naruto wasn't fully Uchiha. He was an Uzumaki, a Senju by principle. He took traits from both, and yet, he seemed to be something entirely different. Madara watched as Naruto confidently jumped down from the top of the tree and landed softly on the dirt road, a feat that probably would have at least fractured the bones of any other child his age. But the differences were all physical, except in appearance. Naruto's chakra was already strong without training, and his body was more durable in every way when compared to an Uchiha or Senju child. When it came to looks and personality, however, Naruto was truly Madara's grandson, especially regarding their minds. He snapped back at Madara when he teased the boy, and he made more and more progress up the tree with every failure. Madara didn't let these thoughts distract him from raising Naruto. If anything, the presence of an Uzumaki body would merely enhance the boy's pre-existing natural talents, such as the Sharingan and chakra strength, to a greater level of potential. To what level was anyone's guess, seeing as the natural birth of an Uchiha and Uzumaki child in one had never occurred during the entire duration of recorded history, Kushina being a modified exception. On top of that, Madara was different to every other Uchiha who had ever awoken the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. He managed to reproduce before dying. Even he couldn't predict what kind of effects that would have on Naruto, being the only descendant of someone like him. Worst case, it meant nothing. Best case would be freedom from a curse. In fact, Madara may very well have died before attaining the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, and never discovered the solution to its crippling, inevitable blindness. He was haunted by the loss of Izuna, and in his grief took the only thing he could to continue the fight. Izuna's eyes had never failed him. Madara would always remember that day. The day he lost his last brother and the trust of his clan. I did it. Naruto cheers, snapping him out of his thoughts. I got to the top. You said that you would teach me ninjutsu. I said that I would teach you one, and tomorrow. Madara's cracked lips twitch. It's getting late, Naruto. The sun was nearly down already. As much as he would like to spend more time with Naruto, it would be suspicious if the boy didn't go back to the orphanage. And from what Madara understood, this was the first time that Naruto had ever trained in the shinobi arts. No matter how much energy and chakra Naruto had, his body wasn't ready for that level of rigorous training yet. Madara would wait until he was certain that Naruto could handle it. Naruto looks around and notices that it's getting dark. His lips tilt down. I should go, Ji-san. Good night, Naruto. Come back early tomorrow for that jutsu. Madara nods stoically. Naruto smiles a bit tiredly, but picks up his book and water bottle and turns down the beaten path. Naruto. The boy looks back and takes in Madara's sharp expression. Don't tell anyone about me. Not even the person you trust the most. Naruto picks up on the seriousness in his tone and gives him a nod. His expression slackens. The younger between them gives him a wave and runs off. That brat. Madara chuckles wryly. Only 5 years old and mastering Genin-level chakra control exercises. 2 in 1 day. That kind of determination was scary in the shinobi world, especially with a lineage like his. He hadn't asked for help, instead going purely on trial and error. He heaves a deep sigh and manages to pick himself up off the bench, using his cane for balance. Things can be taken slowly for now, but he is still plotting. He toils over a plan in his head on how to make his grandson reach his full potential. He is not a good man, but he would do anything for his loved ones. Madara does not stop thinking until he reaches the village wall and the stars are out. He is careful in making sure that no village guard sees him and taps a part of the wall lightly with his cane, just hard enough to push a panel in. A wooden hatch opens up, enough for him to duck under without too much stress on his back. He built this entrance to an underground hideout for his personal use up until he left the village. Judging by the amount of dust that had gathered and how his belongings were all untouched, it seemed as though no one had yet discovered it. No matter. For now, it was just a place to hide between the times that he got to see Naruto. He takes a seat on the wooden throne, dust exploding from the cushion despite the gentle dip, and falls into a deep sleep instantly. Naruto drops into his bed after he eats dinner and has a bath. Big day, Naruto-chan. Tsukimi teases after tucking him in. He doesn't answer, but he does let out a quiet snore into his pillow. Hiruzen has barely a chance to blink before he is picked up by his throat and slammed against the wall of his office. He does take note of a masked man with a red left eye, giving him a glare of pure hatred. Oh dear, this wasn't how he expected his evening to go. Kakashi. Sarutobi splutters, choking on his words. You lied to me. Kakashi's voice is comparatively calm compared to his eyes. Someone steps into the room and gasps in shock. Kakashi, what are you doing? The newcomer shrieks. Sarutobi recognizes it as Shizune, Tsunade's young apprentice. You told me that he was dead, so why? Kakashi's grip tightens. Did I find a child with sensei's and Kushina's scent? The copy-nin's voice rose with every word, angrier and angrier. Sarutobi cannot answer. Partly because he doesn't think that the for your own good and his excuse will do anything to soothe the ANBU's anger. Mostly because his throat was being crushed. Suddenly he is dropped, and he falls to his knees. He gasps for air, mouth moving like a fish out of water. Kakashi, another voice barks. Tsunade this time. What the hell was that about? Answer me. He told me that Naruto was dead. Kakashi's voice is consumed in frustration, enough to ignore protocol. I found Naruto playing near the river. Why? Why wasn't I told? Naruto? Tsunade's hard tone is replaced by confusion. What do you mean you thought he was dead? Sarutobi realizes that things will not go well for him when she finds out what he has done. After Sensei and Kushina, Kakashi swallows thickly. Died. Sarutobi told me that their son was dead. But I found him. He was meant to be my responsibility. Kakashi, I need you to calm down. Kakashi heeds her words, but does not stop his hateful glare. What's your excuse? Tsunade asks him, a bit menacingly. Lying to one of my shinobi like this? The village, he rasped desperately. The village was weak. Kakashi-kun was needed. Kakashi would be of greater use with passable mental health. You're going to have to come up with something better for undermining my authority like this. Tsunade interrupts him ruthlessly. Tsunade turns away from him in mute disgust. It breaks his heart that another one of his precious students feels that way about him. Shizune, take Kakashi to the waiting room. Tsunade orders. I need to have a word with my former advisor. Why yes, Tsunade-sama. Shizune hoops her arm around Kakashi's and drags him out, pointedly looking away from Hiruzen. Kakashi allows her to lead him out, but his Sharingan is glinting more viciously than any Uchiha that the old man has ever met. There is a moment of silence while the Sandaime drags himself back into his chair. He wasn't going to lie to himself. He was truly terrified of what Kakashi could have done to him if Shizune-chan and Tsunade hadn't been there to save him. There was a reason that he was only an advising old man. He was well and truly beyond any combat capacity he might have had a mere few years earlier. I don't think that I need to tell you that you're being asked to leave. Tsunade starts off. This manipulative behavior has a time and place, when it serves to protect Konoha and its subjects. Hiding this from Kakashi was a bad idea, but what I'm confused about is why you thought it would even work, even if it had been the right thing to do. I can't trust your input any longer. The hardness in her tone has returned, but it is the truth that hurts him more. So he nods silently. Good. Tsunade nods in satisfaction. Tsunade steps out of the room, no doubt to assess Kakashi's current state. Hiruzen silently despairs at her cold dismissal, but having things put into perspective like that makes him realize that he had probably only made things worse, and he knows that he has brought his suffering upon himself. Deep down, Hiruzen acknowledges that maybe he had put the village itself before the subjects too often. He thought he was doing what was best, but it should have been obvious that an emotionally traumatized boy like Kakashi could have been thrown completely off the deep end and become a gigantic flight risk because of his stupidity. Kakashi's constant enduring of underappreciation and mental stress speaks well of his character, but not of the people he is supposed to protect. They remain ignorant of the perils he goes through each and every day. Hiruzen wipes his eyes and picks up his belongings. He has no right to interfere anymore. Orochimaru was lost to him long ago, and Tsunade was seeing him for what he truly was. He only hoped that his last student would see him as he always had. Tsunade sighs as she steps into the hall. It was just one thing after another today. Though to be fair, she hadn't expected Kakashi of all people to assault a former Hokage. Seeing Naruto must have riled him up beyond his normal sense of calm. Naruto, she'd heard whispers of another prodigy to be from teams that babysat at the orphanage. They would complain about one boy in particular that was a handful, even for the Jounin. He showed a remarkable ability to pick up what he watched, and the story about him getting into a fight over some girl's pendant still made her smile. She thought back to his parents. She wasn't actually well acquainted with Kushina, despite the relation, but she did know Minato, mostly because Jiraiya wouldn't shut up about him when the kid was his student and always brought Minato with him when he saw Tsunade, if only to show him off. The kid was flaky and annoying, but both he and Kushina had been taken before their time. Nobody deserves dying with the knowledge that their child's future is uncertain. And there's Kakashi too. Tsunade sighs again as she steps into the conference room, where she sees Shizune chattering to a quiet Kakashi. The kid had seriously been through some tough shit. Having to look after himself after his father commits suicide and finding the body himself one night was bound to have some psychological effect on him. But then proceeding to lose two close friends, one of which he had to kill, and a sensei that was probably more like a father figure to him. It was going to get to the point that Kakashi just wouldn't be able to keep himself afloat in his own despair. She needed to do something immediately. She thinks back to Tsukumo. The man had no attachment or bonds to help his mental state save for his son, but wasn't discouraged from doing the honorable thing and removing himself from Kakashi's life. With the way things were going, Kakashi may very well do the same thing as an escape from being unable to cope with his losses. Tsunade toils over it for a while, watching Shizune comfort Kakashi out of the corner of her eye, and thinks she may have a plan. She strides into the room and plants herself in front of the frozen ANBU. All right, kid, this is how it's going to be. Tsunade puts on her best stern voice. I'm giving you another 5 years in ANBU at maximum. After that, you're going to become a Jounin sensei. Kakashi's face becomes instantly disbelieving and he nearly shoots out of his chair to protest, but Tsunade is quick to settle him down. You can, of course, send your new subordinates back to the academy if they fail your test, but at the end of the next 5 years, you will not be returning to ANBU. For all intents and purposes, you will be another public Jounin. Kakashi looks quite flabbergasted when she is done, making her smirk with open amusement. Shizune seems hopeful, and Tsunade knows that her student is concerned for Kakashi for more than one reason. The Jounin isn't exactly fit to take care of a child in the capacity of a family member, but she thinks that he can probably take up a position as a sensei and help not only his students, but himself. After a few silent minutes, Kakashi breathes out a resigned breath and manages to say only one thing. Hi. Tsunade smiles and hopes that she has done right by the kid. We can talk about your assault of a Konoha citizen another time, and your enrollment in an instructor's course to see if you actually are fit to teach Jinin. You overreacted. Badly. You're going to be punished, regardless of your station. Kakashi's head droops. Chapter 2. Do you even know how to use hand signs? Madara's question halts Naruto's desire to dive straight into learning the ninjutsu the old man promised him, and he realizes that no, he doesn't know how to use them. The old man sighs and mutters something about more than just blood before beckoning him over with his hand. Here, Madara stops him, but close enough to see his hands. This is the Ram seal. It's the most commonly used seal because it is the only neutral seal. All it does is speed up your chakra so that it can be used for breaking Jinjutsu or activating a ninjutsu that you are already skilled in. And this went on until Madara had shown him all 12 basic signs and made him repeat them back to him while doing them. A correction here and there, and nearly half an hour later, Naruto could perform all of them well enough to perform a jutsu. The seals you need for this jutsu are first, tiger, ram, monkey, boar, horse, and tiger again. Madara weaves the signs as he says them and takes a deep breath. Facing the river, he breaths out the jutsu. Katan, Gokakyu no Jutsu. Naruto gawps when a house-sized fireball engulfs his vision. The old man's hair billows behind him as the jutsu boils the water and cooks whatever is unlucky enough to be caught under the gigantic flame. Madara stops the jutsu when he runs out of breath, and Naruto is still in complete awe. I'm gonna learn that. He is given a gentle push from Madara's cane, and it's enough for him to clumsily fly through the signs 3 times before getting them right enough for a first attempt. Madara turns and sits on a wooden bench. Madara waves a hand-sized fan to stave off the heat. There isn't exactly much shade right next to the river, but he wants to watch his grandson master the coming of age for the Uchiha clan, even if said grandson doesn't know it yet. He smirked at Naruto's first attempt when he blows out a flame as big as a house cat, just like his own father laughed at him for doing the same. Naruto's shocked exclamation of annoyance makes him even more amused. And then Naruto sets to work with the same perfectionist attitude that he did to master the chakra control exercises yesterday. He stands in place for hours, weaving the same hand signs over and over again, and by midday, he can create a fireball as tall as Madara. He is impressed, very impressed. But it isn't just the small amount of time that Naruto has spent on this jutsu, but rather how little chakra the boy has used over the course of the day. Maybe little wasn't describing it accurately. It was more a matter of the great quantities of chakra that Naruto has used over the day, having had no major impact on his reserves. Even a seasoned Uchiha Genin would be hard-pressed to match Naruto's feat. It was usually quite common for an Uchiha child to master the jutsu in a few days. But like Madara at that age, Naruto's chakra coils weren't able to express the full strength of his chakra through them yet. The lungs didn't magically fill up with fire chakra. They were supplied to by the tenketsu attached to them, which needed training through use to apply more chakra. It was vital that Naruto learn how this worked before he got older. If he were to receive an ignorant teacher to the nature of chakra as a whole, then Naruto would be at risk of never reaching his full potential using it. As the hours pass, Naruto's fireball becomes more than adequate for his age, and Madara believes that he has mastered the jutsu. All that was left was to grow older in order to make him more capable of using it. Naruto. Madara beckons, and his grandson bounds over, face alight with joy. I can make the fireball now. Yes, you can. Madara agrees, but with grim voice to capture Naruto's attention. But ninjutsu also comes with responsibility. If you show off your jutsu without thinking about the consequences, you might get in trouble. Or worse, the enemies you'll meet when you grow up and graduate will have the upper hand. Naruto didn't really seem to understand, so Madara was forced to endure a good 20 Ys in a row. So the bad guys won't know how to beat me if I keep it secret? That's right. Good lad. Naruto beamed. It is the first of many lessons subtly taught, enough that Naruto's young mind would keep it up without questioning it. Over the course 3 years, Madara was forced to realize that in his current condition, there were just some things he could not do for Naruto. Naruto had just turned 8, which meant he was finally ready to start Shinobi Academy. He would be bouncing if Gigi hadn't been strict about being too emotional or whatever. He was done with kiddie school. He was allowed to be happy. Tsukimi-bachan had equipped him with some flip-flops and a kimono shirt, and some pencils and books that he was supposed to need. He recognized one of them as a book he learned the leaf-sticking exercise from. It was nice looking at a new one instead of the tatty one he had before. Gigi always said you should take care of your belongings, especially your equipment that you need. There were lots of kids around. He guessed they were going to be his classmates. It was kind of funny how they all looked like baby versions of the adults standing with them. Was that normal? Maybe he needed to ask Bachan. Gigi knew a whole lot too. Uzumaki Naruto. His name is called by a man with a scar on his face. He steps forward, arm raised. Here. Several adults look at him. It makes him feel a little shy, the way they speak to each other in hushed whispers. Naruto doesn't like it. Who can tell me the 2 founding clans of Konohagakure no Sato? A pink-haired girl raises her hand. Your name again, please? Irika-sensei is very polite, not like the previous teachers. Haruno Sakura. She chirps, standing up. The Senju clan and the Uchiha clan. Very good, Sakura-chan. Take a seat. Now, can someone else tell me who the leaders of those clans were? Senju Hashirama. A boisterous voice shouts from the back row. Naruto looks back and doesn't recognize them as one of the clan kids. Raise your hand if you would like to answer. Irika-sensei ignores the shout, so Naruto raises his hand. Name? Uzumaki Naruto. He stands up. Senju Hashirama was the leader of the Senju clan. That's right. Take a seat. He does so as the loud boy in the back squawks indignantly. It almost makes him smile. Irika speaks up again. I heard one of the clan leaders' names, but not the other. Can someone tell me who the other leader was? His eyes seem to trail deliberately over another dark-haired boy's. Said boy raises his hand. Uchiha Sasuke. He stated without being asked. The leader of the other clan was Uchiha Madara. What? Naruto couldn't stop thinking about the name Uchiha Madara, but he didn't see Madara for nearly a week. I waited for you, but you didn't show up. Naruto scowled. His youthful petulance had only been tamed so much. Don't be so quick in jumping to conclusions. You failed to notice that you were being watched last week. Watched. Naruto looked alarmed, but was also trying to hide his guilt at sounding so pushy to the old man that was teaching him. Yes, I did not reveal myself because it seems that your fellow orphans decided to follow you here. Madara revealed, purposely adding a mite of annoyance to his voice. You need to practice taijutsu anyway. An old man like me can't do anything more than tell you what to do. That might work for jutsu, but not for things that will hit you back. Naruto looked more guilty, but it seemed he didn't want to completely concede fault. He could have a worse trait in Madara's opinion. Not wanting to give up was a valuable behavior, but knowing the facts and choosing his battles was another thing Naruto needed to learn. But why does that matter? You could have taught them too. I also don't want to train them, Naruto. I chose you to train for a reason. Madara baited. But why? Was the golden question. Madara smiled. All I will say is that we have a connection, and you have vast potential. You can find out yourself exactly why it is that I am interested in your growth in particular. Konoha has a wealth of information at its disposal, and its history since the foundation of the village is well recorded. Figure out our connection, and then you will understand. You have my name already, and you have yours. Start there. Naruto stayed silent while Madara sat down on the bench. This link that we share is the reason that I must remain a secret to those around you. It is the reason why your life is at risk for as long as you remain weak. I have a great deal of knowledge myself, and that knowledge may be used to harm you if you recklessly give it away to just anybody, orphans or otherwise. So go. I will be here at the same time, every week, and when you have gained the knowledge you need to understand why I have chosen you, ask. I shall answer all of your questions. A deep breath, so that his dusty lungs could continue. When you can be bothered, that is. You are young and full of life. Konoha was built so that children like you could flourish and be given the time to become strong adults. When you are ready, look for answers. Until then, you'll just have to put up with being annoyed with the way I'll train you. Madara took a deep breath of the fresh Konoha air. It seemed things were going to go quicker than he thought. But perhaps that was for the best. He was on his last legs, so to speak. A man more bone and dust than anything else. Naruto was a citizen of Konoha, and that afforded him a service in the form of caretakers and friends that could help him adjust to modern parlance and social cues. And it gave Madara the ability to focus on actually teaching Naruto abilities and providing educational hints on what might be a good thing to believe in order to preserve and advance what he cared about. He felt that while Naruto was too young to impart his age-earned philosophies and beliefs upon, he could set puzzle pieces in the mind of his grandson, so that when an event occurred that was related to something he spoke of, a piece would fall in place and Naruto would unintentionally understand something that he might not even remember being taught. It was like teaching him to walk, he liked to think. Madara did not have the time left on this earth to mold him in every way, but Obito hadn't exactly turned out how he wanted when trying to turn him into the second coming of Uchiha Madara. I'll give you a hint. Madara allows, for the sake of speeding up the process further. What is the immediate question? I'm training you and teaching you for the same reason that the other children in your class get taught early. That's it. A deep heaving breath to continue again. That's all you're getting from me, brat. Naruto lets it go, but he does give distracted and concerned glances towards Ji-san. Occasionally the coughing and raspy breathing doesn't stop, and Madara can't say goodbye sometimes before he leaves. Tell me what you learned today. Madara's voice can barely escape his mouth. Irika-sensei and Mizuki-sensei showed us how to throw kunai. We can't have our own yet, they said, but Irika-sensei said I was really good for someone who never threw one before. Madara's breathing calms, and he listened with a smile as Naruto recounts his day. Naruto can't help but wonder, is this old man the Uchiha Madara? Are you gonna die? Naruto asks quietly, voice somber but steady. Tsukimi is not surprised at Naruto's question. He has always been quicker on the uptake than his fellow orphans. She could hardly lie to him. Yes, she croaks. It was inevitable. She was old. There was no medicine for that. Not that she would buy it. Every bit of money she had would have to go to the children if they weren't going to be provided for by Konoha's council. And if they did, she wanted what money she had to go to her granddaughter, who rarely had time to see her given her busy life trying to get her bakery up and running. Do you have any family? Naruto poses another question, and she would not be surprised if he had managed to tell her thoughts from her expressions. Tsukimi smiles at the concerned boy. Yes, dear, my family is very beautiful. I miss them when they aren't here. Naruto fidgets with the line of his shorts, looking down. What's family like? She smiles wider. Family is wonderful, Naruto-kun. Words can't describe to you the love and happiness family brings you. One day you're going to have a family of your own, and you'll realize too that there is nothing you won't do to protect and make them happy too. She goes on to tell stories both funny and sad at Naruto's behest and unknowingly impresses upon him. Family is wonderful. Naruto and the other orphans are not woken up by Tsukimi the next morning, and Naruto has decided it's his responsibility to let someone know. His first and only stop is the Hokage's office. He doesn't bother going to the academy for the rest of the week. Tsukimi-bachan died. I don't know what to do now. Shizun kneels down before the crying boy and pulls him into a hug. Don't worry, sweetie. Everything's going to be fine. Naruto is one of few that are given their own apartment, with a caretaker that stops by once a week with some frozen meals and teaches him how to cook and clean. He is one of the only kids at the orphanage who isn't placed into foster care after the process is rushed following Tsukimi's death. and he thinks he knows why. His first encounter with death is something he remembers intensely. Gigi, are you my grandfather? Yes, Naruto. I am. Single Tomo Sharingan meets Triple Tomo. Training barely changes, but Madara is going in full force teaching in comparison to before. It is true that small chakra reserves are easier to control at first. Madara agreed after listening to what the academy instructors had to say about it from Naruto. However, easy doesn't always mean best. Some chakra control exercises can't be learned unless you have a certain amount of chakra. People not born with the potential for large reserves like you or myself could never hope to achieve the utmost perfected chakra control. Why can we learn it and other people can't? Naruto asks astutely. Madara had known at some point he would need to explain exactly what made them different to normal people. He hadn't expected Naruto to catch on so quickly. Shared smarts was a blessing and a curse. I will only explain this to you once. You must never tell anyone what I am about to tell you until you are powerful enough that it won't matter. Do you understand me? Madara's question was firm, and his eye dangerously sharp. Naruto only nodded in response. His Sharingan read Madara's lips so that he could remember forever. Good. Madara sighed and leaned back into the wooden throne. I will first need to tell you the history of the Uchiha and Senju. And it went on for nearly 2 hours. Naruto sat patiently but enraptured with Madara's tale. The Uchiha bloodline's origin, the link between the Senju and Uzumaki. Just what it was that he and Madara were different from the rest, with an embarrassing speech on how babies were made thrown in. To Naruto, it may have well been torture. He regretted asking after the first 5 minutes. Your mother, while not showing it in any way, possessed my genes which were passed on into you. That is why you look so different to your parents, because you look like me instead. But why aren't they here? Naruto asks morosely. Why did they die if they were so strong? Madara stays silent for a few moments, looking at his hands on the top of his cane. It is because of me, Madara states in monotone. My dream to bring peace upon with world drove another like-minded man to take up my goal, Tsuki no Mi. What? Tsuki no Mi was my plan to force the world into an inescapable, perfect genjutsu. One that would control all beings to submit, and each person would have their individual utopia to reside in forever. The problem with my plan was that I needed the Rinnegan, the combined DNA of Uchiha and Senju, along with the 9 Bijou, and a lifespan that would allow me to fulfill the plan at the correct time. I did not have that time, so I made an apprentice out of an Uchiha to fulfill it for me. What's that got to do with Kasan and Tusin being dead? Naruto asks, stomach dropping. Madara looked up from his hands, and Naruto is reminded that the old man isn't strong enough to keep the Sharingan on all the time anymore. A fading charcoal eye looks him in his crimson once. Naruto held his tongue. He wanted to shout out all of the anger that was boiling in him. He didn't want to say something that would turn the only person he had against him. Naruto, Madara calls, softer than he ever had. No matter what I have done, and how evil I may appear to you now, you can always trust that from now on, I would do anything in my power for you. How am I supposed to believe you? Naruto leapt to his feet, face red with fury. You still haven't told me why they're dead, and now it feels like you might have killed them. I haven't done anything since meeting you to make you believe that I am your enemy. At least listen to my words before you decided to kill me. Naruto looked stunned. I wasn't going to. He trails off, unsure what to say to something that hadn't even crossed his mind. Madara looks like he misjudged the reaction too by the way he sucks his lips in, a semi-frustrated expression. So he begins to talk again. My apprentice killed her in a sense. Extracting a bijou from a person kills them. They may manage to last a short while without dying afterwards, but there has been no record of anyone actually living. It is only because of how powerful your mother's chakra was that she managed to survive so long after the extraction, and if she had been given medical attention, then she may have lived long enough to raise you. The problem is that a female Jinchuriki's seal is at its absolute weakest when they are giving birth. My apprentice took advantage of that to obtain the QB sealed within her. I don't know how he knew where she would be. That information should have been kept secret. Giving birth to you, having the strongest bijou taken out of her, and then not receiving medical help because the threat of the QB destroying the village was all too much for her to live. If she had the choice, she would have stayed with you as all parents want. Madara breaths deep, ancient body not able to deal with so much talking at once. Your father understood that there was no hope of your mother surviving, so he sought to make a new Jinchuriki. You. I'm a Jinchuriki? No. Madara denies. Kushina took over the sealing ritual and used the power that your father was going to use in order to send the Kyuubi away. She couldn't bear the thought of you suffering as she did, regardless of what Konoha needed. On the brink of death, she made a decision that would leave her despised by village officials, but at least give a better chance of her son living happy and healthy. Both of your parents suffered terrible wounds to save you from the Kyuubi. Given that your father lived long enough to attempt turning you into the new Jinchuriki, I would wager that he was strong enough to either kill my apprentice or leave him to lick his wounds for at least a decade later. It probably didn't matter either way. Zetsu was still at large, probably plotting. Being a tool and created in his darkest moments, it wouldn't stop until it fulfilled its purpose. If you had the chance, would you change anything? Naruto asks, somewhat rhetorically. There is no point in dwelling on what I would change. Even if the things I have done remain secret and not a single person knows, it would still be the truthful past, least of all the past that has had a tangible effect on our reality today. Naruto is quiet, toiling this information dump in his mind for several dozen minutes. Old man, Naruto begins his declaration, drawing Madara's eyes to him. Train me to be the strongest. I'm going to have a family one day too. I'm not going to let them down. Several weeks pass since some important revelations changed Naruto's outlook, but the only thing that changed about his training was that Madara was no longer withholding helpful information now that he knew Naruto could keep secrets. Teaching Naruto about the Sharingan was one of many things, as well as other Uchiha Jutsu, and while Madara could no longer participate in taijutsu training, he could still use the occasional Jinjutsu if he was feeling well to help guide Naruto's movements. In the era of warring states, there were taijutsu users everywhere. While fewer in number, they have not changed. They still remain weak in skill and power, and the true taijutsu masters were the only ones in the spotlight. Madara lectures. Ninjutsu and Jinjutsu did not have the same great repertoires they did after the founding of the hidden villages. Before that, it was important to master each jutsu with a measurable ability very quickly so that it could be used in battle instead of training to develop new jutsu based off of them. Naruto listens intently as he did pull-ups on a wooden beam, strengthening his body and therefore his physical energies. So why is taijutsu still so important? We have those jutsu now. Naruto barely articulates his sentence through each pull-up. Taijutsu is more an umbrella term that governs all things physical in combat. It is not just forms of martial arts. It is the chase as an enemy runs. It is the speed at which you evade kunai, shuriken, sword strikes, and even jutsu. Most shinobi use ninjutsu and jinjutsu as their first and last resorts when it should be the opposite. Using taijutsu conserves your chakra for when it is needed, and the chakra in your body automatically converts itself into the appropriate energy for fueling and repairing your body in the midst of combat. It is more than fine to use your chakra when you see fit, but do you understand what I am trying to tell you? Naruto drops from the beam and grabs his bottle of water, taking several small sips at a time as to avoid spewing it up. He has learned his lesson from the first time he did. He answers his grandfather's question, putting that thought away. Don't leave gaps in your skills, Naruto states. And what do you mean by gaps? Madara presses, making sure that his charge had practice in conversation and also to find out if he had taken his teachings to heart. If you rely on any skill too much and it doesn't work, you might not have any other options to win. Naruto sits down, legs sprawled out. You can't do anything if the only thing you're good at keeps getting countered. If you're not the best as you can possibly be in a world where people can pretty much do anything with chakra, there is always going to be someone better than you to take away everything. Good. Madara leans back in his chair, but not taking his eyes off of Naruto's exhausted but thoughtful face. Something was clearly bothering him, though. Could he have the right answer? That took him so long to discover himself? What bothers you, my grandson? Ji-san. Naruto addresses quietly as he looks up at Madara. Can your chakra get stolen? Close. So very close. It depends on what you mean. Madara indulges. I mean, taken away forever. What if I couldn't use chakra anymore? Perfect. Possibly, Madara replies. But it is not a simple matter of just being unable to use chakra ever again. Chakra is built into our bodies from conception to birth and to death. If you took chakra away from someone who wasn't a shinobi and never learned to use it, the same effect would be created by doing the same to people like us who train our lives to use this power. They, and we, would die. Naruto looks a bit disturbed at that, and with good reason. I thought, Naruto cuts himself off. Didn't you say that the Rakuto Sannin gave humans chakra? Why would he give us a weakness like that? I told you the legend of how the Rakuto Sannin brought peace to the world by giving humans chakra and teaching them ninshu for cooperation and the active facilitation of peace. Madara corrected, inwardly thrilled that he actually has someone to talk about the point with. You say legend, like you don't believe that's the truth. Naruto observes, dark eyes showing curiosity and not disregard or rejection. Legends are often derived from actual truth, Madara acknowledged. But just the same, they are hardly ever the real truth. You observed yourself just now that the glaring weakness of all beings is that their chakra can be drained from them, killing them. So it stands to reason that we should question why exactly that is. Did the Rakuto build this weakness into us on purpose? Or is it something necessary tied to our biology that we need to have this weakness for the Rakuto to teach us how to use chakra in the first place? Naruto considers this for a few moments. I think both could be as likely as each other. Naruto thought aloud, eyes narrowed in thought. I don't know anything that could say that the Rakuto Sannin was really a good guy fighting for peace. Maybe he used pain and death to terrorize people into submitting to his will of peace? Reasonable, given the information I have taught you, Madara admits. But the Rakuto would have left a darker legacy upon the world had that been the case. After he died, his sons continued a legacy of war between them, as evident by the never-ending conflict between the Uchiha and Senju, and it could easily be argued that they are the cause of the 1,000-year strife and the era of warring states. It was they who showed the world how to use chakra against your fellow man. It could have been that they were using what they were taught by their father, but it is more likely the reason behind that conflict was because of personal behavior instead of their father's legacy. Why is that more likely? The sage is just a legend now. It's not like there's anyone left that still practices ninshu. True, Madara admits. But consider what I told you before. It is not as though the Rakuto left a legacy of suffering on the world. The hearts of the people he brought peace to did not change, only their perceptions of his sons. He went far and wide, to every corner of the world to spread his religion, and they passed on their knowledge to their offspring, teaching them that the sage was a man of goodwill and that his sons were misguided and irresponsible. And that is a legacy that was still visible in the world until less than 100 years ago. The Uchiha and Senju were regarded as nothing more than warmongering tribesmen, undeserving of the power they were born with. But then they forgot. Naruto realizes. When the Uchiha and Senju banded together, everyone else banded together too in desperation, so they would have the power to fight back, when the Uchiha and Senju both wanted real peace for once. And so they forgot their own legacies, and brought upon the age of the hidden village. Madara smiles, pleased at his grandson's reasoning. They sought more and more power, and then forgot why over the span of 100 years, before sinking into the same pit, they sought to never fall in. Might is right. They became even worse than the Uchiha and Senju ever were. They employed tactics such as attacking small and harmless communities to provoke responses from other villages and kidnapping children with Kekkeigenkai in order to give themselves strength instead of earning it on their own. Like Ka-san and the Hyuga girl. Indeed, was all Madara had left to say on that matter. But back to what I was saying earlier. Everything has a weakness. Individual jutsu have weakness in opposing chakra natures. Jinjutsu can be broken, but only think on this weakness of possessing chakra that could be stolen as something you need to improve all of your skills for. Chakra can only be stolen by jutsu more powerful than the chakra itself. It is a natural weakness in your body, but it can be improved, even though the answer for the occasion may not be as simple as having stronger chakra. We have talked about this. Do not rely on a single thing to save you, or that thing will betray you by not being what you need it to be. Not even the Sharingan can be the key to open every lock. A labored breath. Perhaps it's better that you experience it for yourself. Combat will be revealing for you. Madara hands the boy a fresh-looking, small book. Bingo book, Land of Fire South. Pick your mission well, and do not leave until you are certain you are ready to. Getting blood on your hands for the first time is no simple matter. A terrible incident involving their distant relatives occurs, and Madara has little good to say about the dead. He seemed to have a view on family that kept his immediate relatives in higher regard. They got what they deserved. How cruel, grandfather. Do you not love your family as you love me? Madara doesn't so much give an eye roll and his grandson's sarcastic remark. Naruto was well aware what Gigi thought about those who betrayed him. There was only one survivor. Sasuke is in my class, and it was his big brother that did it. Weak. He didn't finish the job. Mean. Madara goes off on another lecture. The fact that even one survived means that there may be some foul play, and I doubt that just one man killed an entire clan. No, there may be more to this tale than meets the eye. Perhaps my apprentice lived after all. Naruto narrows his eyes. Madara smiles at that. It was easy to stoke the flames of determination within a hot-blooded boy like his grandson. What would you do if I were to die tomorrow? Before or after I stopped laughing? Naruto is back to being dry. Madara's brow twitched at his grandson's response. Suddenly, his sense of humor wasn't so funny when it was turned against him. As it was, however, Madara whacked him on the head with his cane. Ow! You're a wily little fox. What happened to the rugrat that used to beg me for jutsu? He realized he was getting the jutsu either way. Naruto made an annoyed face. Too bad you're a brat who can't use them all yet. Madara dismisses that comment. His grandson might think he was going soft. You'd keel over if you tried one at your age, old man. Children these days. No respect and no skill. Old people. Mush for brains and smell no matter how much they shower. Naruto yelps when Madara strikes him again with the cane. All right. Under the cover of night, 9-year-old Uchiha Naruto moved swiftly through tall trees and windy weather. His grandfather told him this would be his final test. If a shinobi was to thrive in this cursed world, no matter their lineage, then they must learn to kill. Naruto had spent the past week tracking a group of missing nin that had been terrorizing neighboring towns of Nami no Kuni. He had a sword tucked to his waist in order to compensate for the lack of reach he had on adults. No matter how unskilled they were, they still had bigger bodies. If they managed to grab him at his size and physical strength, it could be all over. He extends his sensory ability and finds his prey within it. 13 signatures. Good. They're only a few hundred meters away. His Sharingan swirls into life, and 3 Tomo in each peer ominously into the darkness. Naruto reaches the camp and sees what his sensory power could not. 4 women and a child locked up in a slave's cage, looking unharmed for the most part, but still terrified. Their chakra resonates in distress. Don't you worry now, sweethearts, a shabby-looking man leers at them. We're going to take real good care of you. Ain't that right, boss? The man looks around when he doesn't get a reply. Boss. Bulwark. He drops to the cold ground when a kunai hits him between the eyes, and unfortunately draws the attention of the rest of the camp. Naruto swoops in behind another bandit before more alarm can spread and puts his sword through the rogue's back out of his chest. There he is. Another howls, and the last 5 turn to the intruder. He's just a kid. The same one exclaims. That brat still killed the boss. Get him. The bandits draw the swords and descend upon Naruto. One swipes clumsily, hoping to catch the boy in the chest, and end it quickly. His underestimation rewards him with a quickly flicked kunai in the throat. The remaining 4 are more cautious in approaching. But to Naruto, it doesn't matter. They all die tonight. Not fighting the surge of adrenaline, he attacks the one who is holding his sword a bit too loosely and gives the blade a good push to one side with his own. He quickly makes a chopping motion against the bandit's hand, lopping off several fingers. He is forced to dodge an incoming kick from another before he can finish the man off, and reels back when the erratic swipes attempt to make him flee. His attacker resembles a weed in the wind with how haphazardly his arms are moving, and all Naruto needs is one swift cut to the culprit's head, going straight down vertically from the top of his head, and when the sword stops, It is resting in between two halves of a nose. The last two attackers halt in their tracks unwillingly and drop to ground like puppets with their strings cut upon gazing into Naruto's hypnotic eyes. Naruto has a perfect line to finish of the two unconscious bandits, and the other one currently screaming his head off after losing his fingers. He sheathes his sword and weaves his hands through several hand signs as he takes a deep breath. Katan, Gokaku no Jutsu. The screaming intensifies for only a moment and disappears before their ashes do in the wind. Naruto escorts the terrified women and little girl to the nearest village, where he turns in the heads of the missing Nin and receives a hefty reward that he needs to seal into a scroll in order to take back home. They were bad people, Ji-san. Naruto reveals in a solemn tone. Really bad. He is under no illusions as to what they would have done to the women if he hadn't gotten there in time. His grandfather has given him the talks and lectures on issues like this, and tells him that there really are bad people like that in the world. The women, as a token of gratitude, swore not to speak a word of what he looks like to the authorities that question them. He wasn't one to pressure people after experiencing something like that, but he knows that he isn't strong enough to beat every enemy that would come after him for the mere fact that he has the Sharingan. Did you run into any problems? As usual, Madara is more concerned for his grandson than for some strangers, but he wasn't so callous to the point of being unsympathetic. Not a problem. Naruto stuffs some food into his mouth that Madara prepared for them both. I expected it to be more trouble than it was. And the fight itself? Naruto pauses before he can put more noodles into his mouth and carefully considers his answer. It was fun, Naruto admits slowly. I could feel my heart pounding, and Madara stops him by putting a hand on his head and ruffling the black spikes. Now, you have tasted true combat. Madara speaks gravely, but there will be many more foes in your future, stronger and faster than the ones you fought. Do you understand a little of what it means to be strong now? Naruto swallows and nods. Madara has told him that experience was the only way to truly measure one's own strength, and he felt that the fight could have easily gone the other way if the enemy had only been a bit smarter and more aware of their surroundings. He understands now the mountain-sized difference between his strength and his grandfather's, and resolves to work twice as hard to obtain an even greater power. 11-year-old Naruto made his way to the hideout, his shoulder-length spiky black hair swishing with the wind. He decided he wanted his hairstyle to be like his grandfather's, and was allowing it to grow longer. He is so absorbed in his training that often he doesn't even bother going to the academy. Naruto doesn't think that he has the time to listen to the same old stuff on repeat for the next 2 years until he graduates and makes a greater effort to train himself past his current limits. His grandfather helps, of course, providing a wisdom that Naruto had never really appreciated up until his first kills little under 2 years ago. He absorbs everything that Madara has to say, masters every jutsu, and scrapes up every shred of energy he has to make himself not just stronger, but the strongest. Madara lectures him in strategy, history, and shinobi as a whole with their many styles and Kekkei, and pushes him to his absolute limit in taijutsu training. Swordplay, Jinjutsu, Sharingan, Shuriken Jutsu, and quite a bit of medical ninjutsu. There are many things to learn, and Naruto wants to master them all. Naruto knows all the forms by now, but committing them to muscle memory and actually being strong enough to use them was a different story. On the days that his grandfather is too sickly to watch and help, Naruto would either train on his own or go to the academy if he was in need of a day to relax. He aces his exams and wipes the floor with everyone during taijutsu spars, and it frightens off the less confident students. Naruto also develops an interest in Fuinjutsu, not because of his heritage inclining him towards it, but because he doesn't want to get caught by a seal that could potentially lead him to powerlessness. As with everything he learns, he studies this art rigorously. Not to mention that Fuinjutsu was basically untouched on seals or barriers that could enhance his training. His grandfather was the closest thing he had to Seal Master Sensei, but Madara hadn't actually needed them to train. Not when he had Hashirama constantly testing his mettle. Madara was only lesser to Hashirama in reputation. Konoha had made sure that it forgot how Madara had once been Hashirama's equal, rivaled him blow for blow, and was once regaled as an unstoppable monolith of power, even having Hashirama on the receiving end of what was possibly the only instance of Uchiha mercy up until that point. Better in a great many fields, taijutsu a mere one of them, but Hashirama gained a certain something that outclassed Madara, Senjutsu. If he had known where to learn Senjutsu at the time, perhaps he would have beaten Hashirama in the state he was without the Rinnegan or the man cells hitching a ride in his body to keep him alive. As someone with similar powers to Naruto, he made the perfect teacher to reach his full potential, and what he could not teach, Naruto had the time gifted from youth to seek out his answers. Eventually, Naruto just quits going to the academy. He was required to sit in a meeting to discuss his future with the Hokage and 4 academy administrators to make it evident that the program was not helping him grow, and since early graduation was prohibited after the Uchiha incident, he had nothing to do in class besides go over the same points he already knew several times a day. Mind-numbing. Tsunade agreed easily, telling him only to train even harder with the time given to him. And as she did, so the academy admins folded like wet paper and their arguments disappeared into nothingness. He was still required to show up for at least 6 months a year in order to make sure his literacy skills were up to scratch, and also to instill some of that Konoha spirit, but 6 months a year to train in exchange was a worthy sacrifice. So he had 2 years to train himself as much as possible before being tossed into genin life. He hoped that the pay was all right. Looking around to make sure he wasn't being followed, and sensing around for good measure, he carefully enters the hideout as usual. Something was off though. Gigi was weaker, but he could still usually at least feel his presence. He couldn't feel his grandfather's chakra. Ji-san, Naruto called out, voice echoing through the cave. Naruto made his way further and spotted his grandfather sitting in his usual chair. But something was wrong. Naruto still couldn't sense the strong chakra that should be there. Gigi? Naruto tried again. He tried to shake his grandfather awake. No response. Wake up, Ji-san. Naruto shook harder in panic. His mind registered the ugly truth, but the boy still wanted his grandfather to wake up. Naruto collapsed to his knees, and for the second time he could remember, broke down crying. He sat there on the dirty cave floor and remembered the times he shared with the last of his family. 6 months later, Tsunade smiles as the young Uzumaki enters her office. Naruto picks the days well to ask for help, seeing as no one else was around. Happy 12th birthday, Naruto. More stern and serious than she remembers. Thank you, Hokage-sama. Watcha here for? She asks him casually. I want to take the graduation exam. You have good timing. Your age group is about to go through their own exam. If you can wait 2 weeks, you can take the test with them. I can. Naruto replied simply. Good, Tsunade smiled. I need you to wait while my assistants get the paperwork ready. You will need to attend the last few weeks, but I probably won't be able to get you in time if you sign up any later. Are you sure you still want to go through with it? I am sure. I do not want to wait any longer than I need to. All right then, take a seat in the waiting room. Shizen will be there as soon as she can to help you fill in the forms. Soon being 10 minutes later, and yet it still felt like forever. Uzumaki Naruto? Shizen calls. Naruto stood up and approached her, glad the eternity of waiting was fading away. Sorry to keep you waiting. Shizen gives a sheepish smile. It's been pretty intense with the genin exams coming up. There are quite a few clan heirs in this class, so we need to run things by their parents a bit more than usual. Just put down your details here so we can put you into the academy system. You don't need to do anything besides get your photo taken if you graduate, and it stays that way right up until you get chosen for promotion. What is this section meant to be? Naruto asked politely, eyeing the words stipend mission credit. Oh, this means that people who aren't supported by their families will still receive a stipend from the village until they are qualified to start taking on more missions and support themselves. That was good news, Naruto thought. He hadn't saved a dime since Tsukimi-bachan died, and he was put into a crummy little apartment. All of the money he got went into making sure he had the food and tools to train and recover. He would repay the village with the results of his training, of that he was sure. He was currently dirt poor. Naruto signs all he needs to, determination still burning in his heart. I'll make you proud, old man. Chapter 3 Start. Good morning, Naruto-kun. Naruto turned from his door after locking up to see his neighbor, Shizun, greeting him, looking chipper. Yo, Shizun. Naruto replies casually. Good morning, Naranai. A chipper, tiny voice piped up. Huh. Naruto looked around obliviously. I heard a voice, but I don't see anyone. Who could that have been? Naranai. The little voice whined before Naruto was forced to fend off a vicious attack. Of the hug around the legs until he falls over variety. Minako-chan, is that you? When did you get here? Naruto manages to pry her arms from him and pick up the bouncy 4-year-old. I've been here forever. Minako wraps her arms around his neck instead and snuggles in, squishing Naruto's long spikes down. Naruto gives a dry look to Shizun, who only giggles. Minako-chan found out that her Naranai was graduating today, so she just had to wish him good luck. She did? Naruto looked down at the excited girl, silver hair bobbing around when she gave him rapid nods to confirm her mother's statement. Oh, Naruto teases, making the girl blush and bury her head into his shoulder again. From behind Shizun, a male voice makes itself known. Yo, Naruto. Naruto nods at him. Kakashi, the old bat gave you both today off. Hokage-sama gave us both today off, yes. Shizun corrects and affirms in exasperation, and Kakashi gives a signature eye smile. And Kakashi can't go on missions right now anyway. Why? Naruto turns to Kakashi. Injured? Pregnant? Mama. Kakashi deflects lazily, but there was a smile in his voice. Hokage-sama has deemed it necessary to burden me with some genin candidates this year. Shame. I hope I don't get put on your team. You've been here 20 seconds, and I'm already sick of your face. I agree. It's insulting to put up with the presence of those who are significantly less skilled than you. Shizun bonked them both on the head lightly when she practically saw sparks fly between their eyes, leading to Minako giggling. No more prank wars. She orders with her tuned mother voice. She switches to her kindly self again. But since we have today off, we thought we'd come by the academy and scout out the students during their test. Kakashi will get to see who he might get, and Minako gets to watch her Oni-chan. In that case, I better not disappoint. Naruto pokes Minako in the side, eliciting a squawk. We better be on our way. You don't want to be late for your own graduation. Shizun frets over him. Naruto is fond of his neighbors. Shizun had been one of the people to teach him how to live on his own. Things like cooking and cleaning were practically beaten into his head, and she always encouraged him to keep his home in order. Kakashi was someone he thought highly of too. His mannerisms were more calm and helped him understand the behavior of men a little more. Plus, playing rough with him while he was younger was a nice change from the women who rarely wanted to do so. It helped him understand how rough was too rough that it wasn't fun for anyone anymore, and was a valuable tool when he was still in close contact with other orphans a while after Tsukimi-bachan passed away. Fighting was one thing, but playing rough was something different when you wanted to make friends or interact with little fragile people like Minako. Plus, he couldn't go everywhere being stinky and unclean. Kakashi told him it would be a good idea to groom and recently taught him how to shave. I'm sure it will be fine. Naruto is dismissive but does lead on to the academy, Minako climbing onto his shoulders unassisted. Giddy up. Mush. Minako orders imperiously. Yes, Minako-heim. Some of you are here to make your family proud, and some of you are here because you have something to prove. But today, you're here to let yourselves and all of Konoha know that you are worthy of serving beside the finest shinobi in the world. Tsunade finished her speech, and the teachers clapped, followed by students and parents. She steps down from the podium, and Naruto admires the bounce to her chest with every foot down. He hoped no one noticed him ogling the Hokage. He looks at Kakashi, who is smirking at him while clapping. Damn. There is about half an hour of mingling while some of the teachers set up the outdoor tests. Open field shurikenjutsu ranges are set up, as well as a large taijutsu ring. Most of the students head in to chat to each other instead of put up with their embarrassing parents. Naruto is watching it all and basking in the sun rather than head in just yet, and Tsunade decides to approach him. I'm looking forward to seeing what you can do today, Naruto. I hope my decision to let you study and train on your own was a good one. Naruto carefully looks her in the eyes and not an inch down. He didn't want to get caught by the subject of his indecent observation. You won't be disappointed. I'm stronger than anyone else in my class. Of that he had no doubt, teachers included. Then your confidence won't be unearned then. Tsunade smiles at his bravado. She turns to face Kakashi and Shizune, who had just finished talking with some civilian parents. Her smile becomes almost motherly at the sight of Shizune holding the squirming child. She turns her attention to them, and Naruto heads into the academy. Tsunade-sama. Kakashi and Shizune greet in unison, giving a respectful half-bow. I see you decided to see who you'd be sending back to the academy this year. Perhaps I'll be unfortunate enough to have a good batch instead. Kakashi jokes back dryly, and Shizune pinches him for it. Tsunade smiles, though her attention is still drawn to their child. And here's a little munchkin. Tsunade leans in as preparation to issue the cute child with affection, wanted or otherwise. Minako snuggles into Shizune, hiding her face momentarily. Shizune tries to coax her out to say hello. Mina-chan, Tsunade-sama is talking to you. What do you say when someone says hi? A small, cold shiver works down Kakashi's spine. Kakashi looks up slowly to the small stairwell Naruto paused on before he stepped into the academy. The boy wore a smile. One of nightmares. One of pure evil. He turns back around and walks through the door. The Jonin's stomach dropped, and he turns slowly to his daughter. Her face peeks out after watching Naruto look back at her and seemingly received a transmission of confidence from him. Tsunade-bachan. Minako chirps up at her. Kakashi's heart stopped. Shizune's jaw dropped. Every other parent and family member in the courtyard is looking at them now. That little BAS dash. Aren't you adorable? Tsunade-sama gushes and scoops Minako into her arms. Simultaneously, every person in hearing range gave the same reaction. My mom was getting clan stuff done yesterday at Hokage-sama's office, and guess what? What is it, Ino-chan? The little voice could be mistaken for a whisper. You know that Naruto guy? The tall one who's never here? He gets to sit the genin exam. He got to skip academy while we all had to suffer doing this boring junk. Ino throws her hands up in the air, clearly frustrated. Naruto-san had been coming to the academy for the last 2 weeks, and while there was no chance that he would get Rookie of the Year by any means given his attendance record, some of the boys were frustrated that someone who was away so often was effortlessly defeating them in taijutsu spars and class activities. Even Sasuke-san couldn't hit Naruto, but at least the former never complained openly and came back at Naruto with more zeal every time. Oh, little voice responds, unsure if she was meant to be feeling indignant at the truancy of someone she didn't know very well. I don't think that Naruto-san needs instruction. You're so lucky, Hinata. Ino interrupts and slumps back into her seat in a mood flip, face sitting atop her forearms with an overdramatic frown. You're probably going to get Shino, or her mood flips again to dreamy. Sasuke-kun. Hinata is overwhelmed. She doesn't want Ino's oppressive personality to make her more skittish than she already was. Father already probably considered her a lost cause as it was, and she didn't want to disappoint him further, she thought morosely. Ino still has more to say, annoyingly. Meanwhile, I'm going to get stuck with that lazy-bones Shikamaru and too busy eating to win Choji. This sucks. Maybe they realize that you're as hopeless as they are. Ino's head snaps around to the smirking Pinkette across the room. If looks could kill, there'd be one less genin aspirant today. Hinata practically shrinks, frozen on the spot. She knows that a fight is on the cusp of breaking out. As if summoned by the ghost of school fights past, Irika-sensei waltzed into the room as if there wasn't the next shinobi war about to start in it. Good morning. Everyone take your seats. He goes ignored. The yapping refuses to stop. Students, take your seats. His voice is not as chipper. The volume goes up. Hinata covers her ears. Sit down and shut up. Silence. Blissful silence. Hinata sighs in relief. Back to your seats. Irika glances over the students suspiciously before his expression evens out. Don't make your last day here a bad one. You still need to pass this test, so I want all of you to act as befitting a shinobi. Professional. Do you understand? Yes, Irika-sensei. The droning chorus confirms. The door opens immediately after, and Hinata recognizes the tall boy who walks in as Naruto, the mostly truant student. You're late. Irika-sensei seems resigned. He has probably tried and failed many times to get Naruto to show up on time. The test has started? Naruto asks, his voice a smooth and pleasant rumble. Irika-sensei shakes his head. Just take a seat, Naruto. Clearly not making a fuss about it. He probably didn't think it was worth it in the end. Naruto walks up the steps to the open spot next to her, and naturally, there are spiteful boys sticking their feet out to trip him. He steps over them easily, and without looking silly. He takes a seat next to her and crosses his arms over his chest. His muscular chest. She hopes he didn't notice her eyeing him up. He looks at her, and she sees his visible eye wink at her. Damn. Thankfully, Mizuki-sensei is already passing out the written tests, and she isn't afforded the opportunity to blush at being caught. You will each have 1 hour to complete your test, as well as you can. If you are caught cheating in any way, shape, or form, you will be disqualified immediately. Hinata nearly gulps at the size of the test. Every page was completely filled out with questions. She takes a look at the boy sitting next to her and sees that he is unconcerned as he writes his name down. She wishes she could have his confidence. No. She sucks her lips in nervously. I have to do my best. Be like Naruto. She looks at the questions on the first page again. It would be a long hour. Half of the students don't even finish the exam. They'd still have the opportunity to catch up in the practical tests, but it seemed that the only people that would be getting decent written marks would be Naruto and Sasuke, who finished by a significant margin, as well as some of the other clan children. Plus Sakura. Irika and Mizuki collect the papers, and Suzume-sensei, who is usually delegated to kunoichi and espionage training, is the one who gets the grueling task of marking all of the tests. All of the students are led out to the training field, and the parents who had been mingling or taken their other children away to play had returned and were ready to watch the last stages of graduation. I don't recognize the tall one. Did he fail last year? Nara Yoshino asks, standing in a group with her fellow Inoshikicho matrons and other mothers. Shizune huffs at the rude question, and Kakashi nearly rolls his eye. Ma, that's Uzumaki Naruto. Tsunade-sama gave him special permissions to train on his own since students aren't allowed to graduate early anymore. Kakashi answers instead. He must be very skilled then. Yoshino replies with a somewhat dubious tone. Kakashi eye smiles and replies, preventing Shizune from saying something. I'm sure we'll get to see shortly. He claps politely on seeing a civilian student get an above-average score, along with the rest of the parents. And they do. Once Sasuke displayed his own impressive shuriken jutsu, Naruto was quick to match his perfect score shortly after. Go Naruto! Minako cheers joyfully. There was a smatter of laughter and another round of polite applause. Next up is ninjutsu. Irika leads the students to a more open area, and the parents shuffle along the boundary of the children so they could all watch clearly. The students come forward in the same order they were called previously, and Shizune has something to say about one particular candidate. She has remarkable control for someone so young. She comments admirably. Haruno was it? She could make a medic mean if she trains some more. A pair of civilians beam at the praise of the daughter. Uchiha Sasuke. Squeals echo from nearly every young girl, and Kakashi openly rolls his eye this time. Sasuke makes 2 perfect clones, performs an unusually fast substitution, and follows with an impressive transformation into Irika. Not bad. Kakashi gives his own comment. The kid was pretty good at the jutsu provided by the academy at least. It was hard not to see the prodigy that was Uchiha Itachi in him, even though he knew it wasn't fair. Kakashi wondered what kind of potential he had, and how far he could have come under the guidance of people who could teach him better than what he was currently receiving. Kakashi doubted anyone besides Sasuke's own family could have taught him to use his gifts. Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto steps forward, ignoring the jeers from his male peers. Bunshin no Jutsu. As Kakashi expected, Naruto provides 2 perfect clones of himself. Kawarimi no Jutsu. Also as expected, Naruto casts his jutsu at the same speed as Sasuke. There is a foreboding pause before Naruto uses his next jutsu. Henge. Kakashi's eye nearly pops out its socket. Ah! An erotic moan cuts through the silence. Wherever did my clothes go? A stunning, Young woman with silky black hair that reached her ankles revealed herself, and wisps of smoke are the only protection of her modesty there is. Nosebleeds and blushes erupt all around the crowd. Nice Naruto. Kakashi hollers his praise, giving an inspirational thumbs up before he and every other man in his situation are promptly put in their places by furious spouses. Uzumaki Naruto. Shizun's voice was like death calling, sending shivers down the transformed boy's spine. Iruka plugs his nostrils with his fingers. You idiot. Don't use perverse jutsu like this. I should have known. Tsunade, who had been mostly silent thus far, slaps her forehead in exasperation. Of course a young boy left to play with jutsu on his own would do something ridiculous like this. The crowd calms down and Naruto dispels the transformation, although glares from every female, including the Hokage, are enough to keep him behaved for the moment. He transforms into Iruka flawlessly, and it is the concluding jutsu of the exams. Next is Taijutsu. I hope you've all got energy left for this one. Most of the fights are pathetic to say the least. Even a pair of the famed Ino-Shikicho trio children aren't happy to engage in a taijutsu spar. Shikamaru throws lazy, unenthused punches at Choji, and Choji barely deflects them at all. It could be suspected by any observer that they only put up the display at all was because their mothers were watching. Honestly, that boy, Yoshino gripes, and Choji's mother also gives an over-the-top sigh. The boys are rewarded with poor marks. Kiba and Shino provide a more interesting matchup, something their mother and father respectively seem happy about. Your boy is as gifted as you were with your clan's signature style. Aburama Shibi compliments after said boy defeats Shino. He's got the vigor for it. Some agrees with a proud smirk. But he really needs to learn not to just throw himself around like that. The mini-you nearly took it from him with that blind spot attack in the middle. Goes to show brains matters just as much, huh? Shibi nods in agreement, silently impressed that his son had the will to fight even knowing he was outmatched. Uchiha Sasuke and Uzumaki Naruto. Step forward, please. Both students form the seal of confrontation before moving into more comfortable positions. Kakashi observes Naruto and Sasuke through the ear-rattling noise generated by fangirls, and sees that Sasuke looks quite pumped up. Naruto too takes on a more serious demeanor. He hadn't actually seen Naruto use shinobi techniques before. Their relationship was more akin to uncle and nephew than teacher and student. For him, it was quite bizarre to see him take an unrecognizable taijutsu stance and look more akin to a seasoned warrior instead of the teasing big brother and semi-prankster that stayed up far past his bedtime. He knew that the Naruto knew wasn't just a mask. There was real joviality in him. But he couldn't help but wonder how much Naruto was hiding if he could display such technique with seemingly no influence from the shinobi forces. Are you both ready? Mizuki is proctoring this time, raising his arm into the air. Naruto and Sasuke nod. Hajime. Sasuke rushes Naruto with impressive speed and tries to kick Naruto's legs while throwing the first punch. Naruto strafes instead of moving backwards and sweeps Sasuke's legs from the side. Mid-fall, Sasuke spins and flings an axe kick quickly enough that Naruto catches it with his hand. Naruto isn't content to let Sasuke control the fight and throws a punch with his free hand that collides with Sasuke's chest and knocks the wind out of him. Sasuke blocks the follow-up strike and tries to disrupt Naruto's footing by swinging over his head. Naruto lets go of the foot he's clinging to instead of falling for it and springs into a kick at his opponent's stomach, sending him tumbling away. The Uchiha boy rights himself immediately and is forced to defend from the larger and faster Naruto, who has decided to take the lead. Rather than try to block, he deflects and again tries gaining the advantage by controlling Naruto's footwork. The other boy is quick meet every retaliation kick with steady leg blocks. This is not two students fighting. Kakashi is floored by the speed and skill. This isn't even two genin fighting. Sasuke strafes and dips low. He goes for a strong kick to get Naruto in the air, but it doesn't work on the faster boy. Naruto reeled back instead of blocking and attacks as Sasuke reaches full extension. Sasuke does a push-up and thrusts another kick too, which is pushed away roughly enough to flip him and expose his chest. A powerful kick is the greeting for it, sending Sasuke rolling across the ground again. The academy teacher seems content to merely watch on as the spar gets rougher. Naruto has yet to take a hit, but Sasuke still seems to have energy despite the strong blows. You've gotten stronger, Sasuke. Naruto grins, looking quite pleased, and the seriousness bleeds away. Come at me. Let's dance some more. Sasuke throws himself into a high-speed flurry and kicks, punches, and deflections. Naruto's hair billows as the pace of the fight continues to climb, and he answers every strike faster and stronger than Sasuke can match. Sasuke's face gets red from exertion and Naruto is happy, is escalate. The shorter boy's form begins to deteriorate but keeps up his vicious assault with cry of adrenaline-fueled vigor. Unreal. Some utters beside them. She is as stunned as he is. Those boys aren't anything to scoff at. Kakashi mostly ignores it. His eye is wide as he notices one thing that he doubted the others had yet. Sasuke's steam was running low, but he seemed to be reacting better than before. His moves are more efficient despite being tired, and is doing better at defending from Naruto's blows than before. He is too tired out to attack effectively, but his movement was more fluid. He immediately realized what had happened when the glint of Sasuke's eyes was revealed. This spar has gone on too long. Shibi disapproves, probably having caught on Oswell. It is unusual that this is allowed to continue. Kakashi silently agreed with the assessment. It had escalated too far if it could incite a change of that magnitude in Sasuke. It could be the emotional frustration at losing or being pushed harder than he had ever before. But there would be people pleased with this development. The instructor Mizuki seemingly comes to his senses once everyone else has caught on to the change and calls out the result. This spar is over. Uzumaki Naruto and Uchiha Sasuke receive full marks. Sasuke slumps instantly, having been drained of all his stamina. Cheers erupt at the display of taijutsu prowess. Unsurprisingly, no one had expected to see that when they came here today. Naruto walks over to Sasuke while the girls crowd around the fallen boy. He at least gets a clear view of Sasuke's face. I guess I should congratulate you, Sasuke. The panting boy manages to get a look at Naruto through the fangirls blotting out the sun around him. Naruto pays no heed and sticks out two fingers. The start of the sign of reconciliation. Sasuke takes them in his own without thinking and is pulled to his feet, along with two helpful females. Naruto pulls out a kunai slowly and angles it squarely for Sasuke. The boy looks at the reflection of his eyes in stunned disbelief before he collapses again. Oh no, Sasuke-kun. Most of the attending adults exchange their own looks of disbelief. Much time is wasted as they discuss the happenings of the fight, and the noise level steadily increases. Irika is quick to rush over with a bottle of water. Drink it slow, Sasuke-kun. We don't want you throwing it back up again. Sasuke nods placidly, the most cooperative he'd ever been for Irika. Said teacher looked over at Mizuki with a questioning look, clearly wondering if the other instructor was up to something, but decided to leave it for later. Shizune naturally head over as well and bullies the young girls out of the way, using a diagnosis jutsu on Sasuke's forehead. He's perfectly fine, just physically exhausted and a bit battered. Her hands start to glow as she transferred a small amount of chakra into him and provided some first aid to his developing bruises. A younger voice has even more to say. That was amazing, Oni-chan. You were all like Fwa, and he was like Blue. And then, Irika and Mizuki quickly tally up the results of the practical exams along with Suzume, who brought out her own. A couple of genin who had been tasked with helping out the academy today were the ones to set up a display table with fresh, brand new Konoha headbands. The blue fabric didn't have so much as a speck of dust. Generally, exam results were kept private, but seeing as a considerable amount of clan children would be participating in the graduation, it was decided that a spectacle would be made out of it to help provide motivation to students who didn't pass, and show parents who weren't as keen on the shinobi business as clan parents were what was required of their kids to help guide them better. Students who didn't pass the exam would be held back and provided a same-day retest. And if they failed their second attempt, they'd be brought in with their guardian to determine if they were to stay another few months to get them in fighting shape or have them drop out entirely and pursue conventional civilian education. Never let it be said that Konoha doesn't give ample opportunity for growth in its walls. Although today's display may have the opposite of the intended effect, Seeing a pair of boys outclass them in such a way might dampen one's motivation and stop them from being shinobi at all. The aggressive and unnecessarily violent spar was eye-opening for some. But seeing as it was the last spar of the day, hopefully the graduates would be encouraged to work harder, or at least have their parents make them work harder. Uchiha Sasuke, step forward please. The exhausted Uchiha stand to attention in front of Iruka. Today you have proven to yourself and Konoha that you will be an excellent and worthy addition to our shinobi. You received the title of Rookie of the Year for your dedication. Congratulations on becoming a genin. Claps sound all around and enthusiastic cheers come from a cooing squad of girls. Hooray for Sasuke-kun! Ino and Sakura shout in unison before glaring at each other. Sasuke ties the forehead protector around his head and takes his seat again quietly. This time, he is right beside Naruto. Uzumaki Naruto, step forward please. Said boy stands and his spot on the ground is taken instantly by a dog pile of frothing fangirls. Naruto. Iruka starts with a smile. I'll admit that I didn't expect what we got out of you today, but I see that Tsunade-sama's intuition has proven right again. Wear this with pride, and welcome to the forces. I know you'll make a fine Konoha shinobi. Thank you. Naruto answers politely and ties up his own forehead protector. Thankfully for him, there is plenty of free space this time. There is applause for him as well. That concludes your graduation. I am honored to have taught such fine young shinobi. Iruka is soft-hearted and can't help the wide and proud smile. You've only got one day left, I swear. Come back tomorrow morning for your assignment to your genin squad. Naruto is accosted by the people he arrived with. My goodness, when were you going to tell us you could do that? I wasn't. Naruto replies honestly, adjusting his headband to try and get a good fit. Didn't think that it mattered. Well, Shizun huffed, holding her sleeping daughter and being careful not to raise her voice too much. Iruka-sensei wasn't lying. You're going to make an excellent shinobi if you keep that performance up. It's kinda weird that Mizuki-sensei had it go on for so long though, but it's cool that Sasuke got the Sharingan. Naruto ponders thoughtfully. Indeed it was. Kakashi smiles, but his thoughts are also along the lines that the spar was allowed to continue. Well, time for my celebratory ramen. Naruto puts his hands behind his head and meanders in the direction of Ichiraku's. Ma, why don't you wait a second? I'll treat you. Kakashi halts him and Naruto looks at him questioningly. Kakashi looks at Sasuke as he sees the boy watch Minako climb onto Naruto's shoulders again. Great work, kiddo. Kakashi smiles at him. I was impressed. You should probably get used to fighting on ground level though. Being floaty is normal for some people, but you can see how Naruto controlled the fight, right? He kept you on the ground because he knew you'd be less effective. I think you've got potential though. Wow, Shizun utters in amazement. You must have really left an impression if my quiet little mouse of a husband said something. Thanks. Sasuke says only, not really sure what else to say when a legendary shinobi like Hatake Kakashi gives him a taijutsu tip. Kakashi eye smiles again and leads their little group away. Sasuke watches enviously for a moment before he leaves Oswell. So Kakashi, why don't you tell me why you want Naruto and Sasuke? Kakashi nearly snorted, seeing as every other instructor had wanted at least one of them. The Jonin who were to become instructors were lined up in the late afternoon to discuss last-minute changes that may need to be made. They're good for each other from what I've seen. Naruto is clearly gifted and Sasuke lacks a rival that can compete with him. Naruto would be that and more. According to this, Kakashi gestures to the academy profile of Sasuke. He has trouble interacting with his peers, but I didn't see that kind of behavior even after Naruto thrashed him. As far as I can tell, Naruto is outright encouraging Sasuke to get stronger instead of dragging him down, and Sasuke responds well to it. This might even help get him to defer to Naruto, which might be a stepping stone in having him interact with other people too and build bonds with his fellow shinobi. Kakashi paused before continuing. And he awoke the Sharingan today, something that I at the very least have more knowledge on than others right now. Tsunade looked to be considering it. And I want Sakura too, for obvious reasons. He tacked on, no doubt having been on the receiving end of an earful by his wife. All right, seeing as you're the only sensei here who gave me a good reason instead of just wanting a prodigy that could learn on their own and do less work teaching, you're approved. Other teams will be as follows. Team 8 will be Inuzuka, Hyuga, and Aburame under Yuhi Kurenai. Team 10 will be Yamanaka, Nara, and Akimichi. The list goes on until all the candidates are on teams. Alright, that concludes this meeting. Tsunade slaps the team list down on top of a messy pile of papers. Everyone except Kakashi, Kurenai, and Asuma out now, please. Once the room is mostly cleared, Tsunade starts again. Kakashi, I think you're aware that what happened today at the academy is not normal. She starts looking at him. I sent an ENBU to monitor the academy instructor Mizuki, but I've yet to hear back from them. Kakashi, brief them and investigate Mizuki, then report anything you find back to me. Hi, Hokage-sama. 3 Jonin chorused. The cooling body of an ENBU lay dead at the feet of 2 men. One's hand is lit with hissing medical chakra. He awoke the Sharingan, you say? Well done, Mizuki. I live to serve Orochimaru-sama. The proud instructor replies. Indeed, it's a shame that your little plan drew the eyes of some very important people. You might have had better use alive if it hadn't. The hissing blue jutsu was the last thing he saw before receiving a painless death via chakra scalpel. A shame indeed. Round glasses glint in the dark. Chapter 4 start. Naruto readied himself through his morning routine, going through his breakfast and hygiene ritual before changing into the shinobi, where he'd managed to save up enough to afford from babysitting and hanging on to change from the stipend he received from Konoha to see him by until he joined the shinobi forces. The glint of the sun is minor through his windows, and he could tell it was going to be a good day for whatever his next step in shinobi life had in store for him. Privately admitting that maybe he was a little nervous, he'd never worked in a team before, and Kakashi was a person of legendary senses and skill. He'd have to try harder to hide what he wanted to keep secret for now. Uncomfortable questions would rise if he revealed any suspect abilities. He wanted to do so on his own terms in a situation that he could control. He wanted to create an echo that would scream across Konoha and say, "Don't mess with me." There were still ways he could honor his heritage without being too overt about it. The Uchiha clan wasn't the only clan he hailed from, and the Uzumaki clan's symbol was an iconic piece of design that was used in all modern Konoha uniforms and forehead protectors. It wouldn't be out of place or suspicious of him to be wearing the sign of Yuzushio and Konoha's friendship. He threw on a new black long-sleeved shirt, customized for a low price to have the Uzumaki swirl on the back. He figured that if he wasn't going to represent the Uchiha yet, he'd try and make his departed mother proud. He had black sandals to match and a gray pants with the shins wrapped up. He tied up his new blue forehead protector last, and thankfully it didn't alter the style at which he wore his hair. It still parted to cover his right eye, and the rest at the back was only just long enough to reach the red swirl on the back of his shirt. Naruto tidied up and finishes his dishes before grabbing his tool pouch and securing it to his belt. He opens the door as greeted by the morning sun, still casting shadows in the street of apartments. His senses told him that Kakashi was still in next door and that his chakra was still and unwound, likely meaning that he was still asleep. He pitied the team that got him as their sensei. The Uzumaki boy begins a slow trek back to the academy and decides to practice his sensing on the way. He could accurately determine the number of people nearby, the levels of chakra they had, the rhythm of their chakra to determine if they were resting or under Jinjutsu, and how strong their chakra was, which he could to some degree sense what chakra nature they possessed. But as with all things, there was room for improvement. One of Madara's lessons was, how do you take what you know to the next level? It was all well and good being gifted with abilities, but what good were they if they could not be taken to a degree that made them functionally better, as in the case of his mind's eye of the Kagura sensing ability? It was said to be an extraordinary and multi-purpose sensing technique, and yet Naruto could barely sense 20 meters down the street before everything got fuzzy and inaccurate to him. He admitted to neglecting his training in that regard and resolved to do better with himself. He couldn't always make excuses by only training the things he found most interesting and got the best results from doing. Even though it was boring, Naruto thought about a phrase that got passed around a lot when in the orphanage: nothing worth having comes easy. He immediately bumps into someone when he closes his eyes for a moment to focus. Trying to see without your eyes was quite the challenge. Pardon me. Naruto says to the back of the woman he knocked slightly. It's fine, the woman replies, her voice having a distinct maturity to it. But you should probably walk with your eyes open, any? The risk of embarrassing myself helps me improve my sensory abilities. Naruto gives his poor excuse and hopes it's enough to deflect if she's actually upset about it. She cracks a smile, and Naruto counts it as a victory. A censor, huh? The man with her speaks up, sounding surprised as he plucks a cigarette from his mouth. Sounds like your sensei got lucky. I'm Kurenai, and this is Asuma. The beautiful woman introduces. We're on our way to the academy to pick up our new teams. I think Asuma is bitter that he didn't get you. I am not. Asuma protests, though he seems amused. And I don't think there was a chance anyway. I get the Ino Shikacho trio, as is tradition. Most of the teams were made up before the graduation anyway, but things had to be discussed to account for dropouts and latecomers. Kurenai reveals, apparently not seeing any need to be secretive with the information. She's bitter that she didn't get you either. Asuma clearly fibs. Ignore him, Kurenai says even as she elbows him in the ribs. Don't tell me that I got Kakashi then. Naruto surmises that there aren't many options left. He wasn't ignorant to the fact that as someone who was relatively high profile in the way of genes and thus far displayed performance, someone like him wasn't going to get an unproven sensei who lacked the knowledge to help him reach his potential. The higher-ups didn't know that Naruto knew of his heritage, but if he could turn out even half as strong as his father who was the Hokage, then clearly it would be a good investment to give him a talented and powerful teacher. The way Kurenai and Asuma exchange amused glances gives it away. Naruto sighs, but doesn't complain. Even a tardy teacher can be a good one. Well, sorry for bumping into you, but I should set an example to my sensei by showing up on time. Naruto excuses himself, leaving the pair of jonin to chuckle at his back. The sensei exchanged a look. Did you feel his chakra? Asuma asked lowly. He was no censor, but being close enough to anyone using a jutsu could give off the feel of their inner power. Yes, it's insane. He has to have nearly as much chakra as Kakashi, and nearly as strong too. Is that even naturally possible? He's 12. His mother was the same. Asuma comments, idly recalling the story of how only a member of a certain clan could have chakra potent enough to suppress the strongest of all the Bijou. His father was no slouch in that department either. I don't think Kakashi has come close to that level, and he's older now than Yandame-sama was when he passed. Still, Kurenai thought on how dangerous that kind of potential could be in the hands of an enemy manipulator. Kakashi really is the only choice to teach him. Yeah, Asuma agrees, taking a drag of his cigarette. If he were younger, he'd try to bluster and reason that he could be the teacher of someone like that. But Hatake Kakashi was on a different level, elite among elites, and seemingly only better now that his mental state had evened out. Kakashi was the only person who could teach and protect a unit of prodigies while they were developing. Regardless of what anyone wanted, Naruto could only be taught by Kakashi. Naruto doesn't savor the glares from both the girls and boys as he steps into the classroom. There are a scant few people who aren't annoyed with his presence. Included among them was Sasuke himself. He could sense the change in Sasuke's chakra that the awakening of the Sharingan had triggered, but it seemed he'd recovered well enough from Shizune's tending to his injuries. It's annoying that he has to put up with looks like that. What had he done wrong, really? Beat up another student who was perfectly happy to fight him? The boys he could understand. He knew that it sucked feeling like you're second best or being outshined in every way. He wasn't angry with those looks, because he knew the ones with strong will would use that as motivation to grow, while the weak would complain about how unfair it was. There were several among them that just didn't care and would do things at their own pace. He could see reason in that at least, even if he couldn't see himself doing the same. Sasuke hadn't been holding back, and Naruto saw opportunity there. The other boy wasn't afraid to use his strength. Naruto felt like he could use someone like that as a sounding board for taijutsu practice. If he could convince Sasuke to spar with him regularly, then it would be like having an ideal training partner. Both of them could learn to combat each other when the other threw something new at them. The fangirls didn't understand that it was a good thing for Sasuke to meet someone who wasn't willing to just let himself get knocked over, but he supposed the blame wasn't solely on their shoulders. They were only kids, and kids didn't think like adults or people who are obsessed with strength. Maybe it was in the nature of those descended from the sage to be obsessive. Whether it be power or love, no one had accused Uchiha, Senju, or Uzumaki of being entirely sane. Smart, but not normal. He takes a seat next to Sasuke, which is miraculously empty. Most likely case being that the two boldest declarers of Sasuke's affections, Ino and Sakura, were comparatively more aggressive and competitive to get his attention, and it probably didn't end well for any other female that took up seat next to him. The males didn't seem to be friends with Sasuke, and it was easier to talk to your friends in class when you were right next to them. Yo, sorry for the beatdown yesterday, but I'm not going easy on you if we get on the same team. Naruto delivers a lackadaisical and frankly not sorry apology. HN is Sasuke's opener. It's fine. It worked out in the end. Ho, are you talking about your Kekkei Kai? Naruto tries to bait Sasuke into communicating with him more. Sasuke looks at Naruto and activates his Sharingan. Naruto doesn't flinch. The juvenile state of his eyes posed no threat to him. There was a single tomo in each. It seems to startle a few of the students. Yes, I learned from you as well. Don't think that our next spar will be the same. Sasuke deactivates his eyes after seemingly assessing Naruto's chakra network. I should hope not. It's hard to grow stronger when you fight weaker people, Naruto said, though his eyes cast over to one of the boys on the other end of the room. Not that weak people aren't capable of extraordinary things. I hear that the Nara clan is full of strategists who wield a unique and useful jutsu. I suppose. Sasuke said only. He probably didn't understand the value of people like that yet. Did Hatake Kakashi train you? The question is a little awkward, but given that this is the most he'd heard Sasuke speak, it was probably a good sign he was even being spoken to. Nah, he's my neighbor. He pays me to babysit sometimes, but that's about it. Naruto doesn't mention what he thinks of Kakashi. It wasn't really anyone's business if he liked or disliked someone. Their conversation was halted by the noisy entrance of Sakura and Ino. Maito was in the door first. I win. I sit next to Sasuke-kun. Like hell, forehead girl. Stomping up the steps to where Sasuke was usually seated, their violent tendencies are halted by the sight of Naruto in the chair they both wanted. Sorry, ladies. Sasuke-kun is mine now. Naruto smiles as mockingly as he could manage. He fell deeply in love with my Oiroke no Jutsu and requested that I sit next to him for his last class. HN. Sasuke visibly cringes at Naruto's words, making said boy smile wider. You can sit next to him this once. Ino's words are spat out contemptuously, but her eyes show fear at the thought of making Naruto angry. Sakura glares at him too, but neither girl offer anything more than dirty looks after the display during graduation. Naruto doesn't miss the near-silent sigh of relief from Sasuke. It seemed Naruto was his savior. Iruka walks into the room and prevents the awkward glare down about to start between the two outspoken girls. All right, I think I've kept you all waiting long enough. Iruka begins to call out the team list. Team 3 will be civilians, and it remains civilian students until he gets to Naruto's team. Some teams were still in rotation, so a few were skipped. Team 7, Uchiha Sasuke, Haruno Sakura. Yes. No. Ahem. And Uzumaki Naruto. Your sensei will be Hatake Kakashi. Naruto listens to the rest of the listings. Classic Inoshikacho, a recon tracking squad, and some other teams likely thrown together based on teamwork capacity rather than skill sets. Slowly but surely, each sensei comes to pick up their teams, and Naruto knows that Team 7 has the misfortune of having to wait for Kakashi, who he knows is still asleep. This sucks, he says, mostly to himself. You said he's your neighbor. Can't we just go get him? Sasuke suggests. That's probably not a good idea. Kakashi is normally an early riser, so he must have been kept up late for an emergency or something. And I don't really want to get accused of stalking our sensei. Naruto thought it would be a bit too rude to go knocking on Kakashi's door. In any case, nobody said we couldn't utilize this time. I think I'll practice my sensory jutsu. HN. Sakura looked unsure, and eventually bored as all she could do was go over the old textbooks on the shelves. Poor kids. Asuma said pityingly, parting ways with Kurenai after collecting their teams together. Kakashi dismissed them both shortly after finding not just the body of the suspicious academy instructor, but one of an ANBU Oswell. It was standard practice to dispose of A and BU corpses carefully, and the incident had occurred within Konoha's walls. An investigation like that was beyond his and Kurenai's pay grade, and the responsibility now rested in the hands of internal investigations. Oi, sensei, his new female student whined. How come I get stuck with these two? I got some of the best marks in all our class. I should be one Sasuke-kun's team. Troublesome, is Shikamaru's bored reply. It won't be so bad with us, will it, Ino? Choji asked innocently. Ino falters a bit. The Ino Shikicho trio is a famous collaborative team of particular clans. Maybe your old man hasn't told you, but the teamwork of the last trio was legendary, just as the previous team was, and the one before that. Asuma's voice is stern. At least be happy that you're part of an effective combo and on a team with people that don't hate you. Most genin don't get that luxury. Shikamaru and Choji look up at Asuma now. Or, you could be, if not for one small detail. What detail? Shikamaru asks/demands with narrowed eyes. Asuma smiled. You're not really genin yet. You still need to prove you're worth my time training you. What? Ino's voice explodes in fury. Your former classmates are a bit unlucky. Their sensei isn't going to be up for a while after how busy he was last night. And Naruto-kun doesn't like to waste his time. Hinata stammers out quietly. He won't sit still for long. Who cares what that asshole is doing? What are you going to teach us, sensei? Kiba bursts out, clearly brimming with energy at the thought of training and finally doing something that wasn't schoolwork. Kurenai levels him with a red-eyed glare and makes Kiba flinch. Shino wisely remains silent. Don't be rude. You three are in for an unpleasant surprise if you think the academy was the hardest thing you're going to be doing as a shinobi. In fact, you're going to prove to me that my time is better spent teaching you than going on regular missions. I still have one last test for you, and if you fail, back to the academy for another year. Kurenai finished with a grim smile. The three genin look up at her in horror. Naruto wasn't brooding, he promised himself. He was just a tad frustrated at his sensei being late. 3 hours late. Yo, Kakashi finally deigns to greet his students from the door. Sorry I'm late, guys. A black cat crossed my path, so I had to go the long way. 3 equal deadpan looks. Kakashi coughed in the awkward silence. Anyway, let's have a nice chat on the roof. And walks out the classroom door. The 3 genin plod after him all the way up, and they eventually find themselves in a decorative little rooftop balcony, well shaded for students' lunchtime leisure. Introduce yourselves, Likes, dislikes, any dreams and hobbies? Why don't you go first, sensei? Sakura asks him shyly. He nods. Couldn't hurt, right? Well, I'm Hatake Kakashi. I have no desire to tell you my likes and dislikes. My dreams for the future. Kakashi trails off boredly. 3 expectant looks. As for my hobbies, I have lots of hobbies. Useless. Weird old man. Just his name. Sasuke, Naruto's, and Sakura's simultaneous thoughts. You first, Sakura-chan. He gives a nice smile at her dull look. My name is Haruno Sakura. I like a distant and dreamy look at Sasuke. I dislike Ino Pig. She develops a fiery look. My dreams include. Back to point 1. Oh brother. What an emotional spectrum. HN. Kakashi, Naruto's, and Sasuke's thoughts were all unexpressed outwardly and remarkably similar inwardly. Well, Naruto starts off, shaking off his dry reaction. I'm Uzumaki Naruto. I like training and cute girls. Sakura growls, and Naruto fights hard to keep the smile out of his voice. I dislike when people underestimate me. Dreams? I want to have a big family that I can be strong enough to protect. In the confines of Sakura's mind, an inner voice asks. And hobbies, well, I don't mind learning new things, I guess. Naruto finished lamely on realizing that his only real hobbies was training and winding people up. Kakashi nods. Many orphans expressed desire to have family. The teams he'd rejected before had many of the same answers in that regard. The devastating incident 12 years ago had left early scars on Konoha's youth. How about you, Sasuke-kun? Anything to share with the team? Uchiha Sasuke. I don't like or dislike much. My goal. I wish to restore my clan. His mood shifts slightly darker. And to kill a certain man. Scary. Sakura thought, gulping a little. She didn't know Sasuke-kun had such ambition. Naruto doesn't think anything in particular. He feels only a wave of understanding. Well, Kakashi claps his hands together, effectively breaking the uncomfortable silence. It's good that you all know each other now. I hope you continue to be friends after one of you goes back to the academy. What? Naruto voices the confusion he and his teammates are struck by. Kakashi jiggles two bells tied to a hoop on his pants. I don't really have the time or desire to train 3 needy students. We're going to have a little survival test, shall we say? You 3 are going to try your best to get these bells from me. And the one of you who doesn't manage to get one, bad luck. Kakashi is entirely too jovial. Sakura jitters in place, obviously scared at the thought of competing with Sasuke-kun and Naruto. They won't hesitate to fight me for a bell. She thought in panic and looked at Naruto. I have to trick him. There's no way I can't be on Sasuke-kun's team. Meet me at Training Ground 7. All right, you 3 have until sundown to get these 2 bells from me. Ready? Kakashi begins a markdown. All 3 Genin tense. Set. Go. Sasuke and Sakura run into the bushes surrounding the grounds, but Naruto leaps into action immediately. He challenges Kakashi with vicious punches and kicks, all of which are blocked as easily as the Jonin breathed. Already? I thought I'd be able to get some reading in before you started. Kakashi complains as he flips Naruto over his head. The younger male is extremely aggressive and quick. Kakashi is even more impressed than he was the day before. Naruto's speed was nothing to flinch at, and his form and strength could rival other skilled taijutsu users in the village. Unfortunate that Kakashi was not a Chunin, or even a normal Jonin, because he blocks and meets Naruto's every blow evenly, but doesn't push the offense, making it clear who was stronger between the two. Naruto lands deftly and pulls out 2 shuriken, throwing them just right of Kakashi's center and attacks his left with kunai in hand. Kakashi catches the shuriken on a finger each without moving from his spot and throws them back immediately. Naruto deflects, catches one of the shuriken before it lands on the grass and flicks it at Kakashi's neck within a foot of it. Too slow. Kakashi is all too happy to tease. He grabs Naruto's kunai hand and uses his strength to pull Naruto forward and his kunai into the shuriken. It pings off the kunai before it lands and drops sadly onto the ground. With a strong grip on his arm, Naruto uses his legs to climb up Kakashi's torso, as if rappelling up a cliff. With his spare hand, he launches a wicked punch at the top of Kakashi's head while making a stomping motion with one foot, aimed at his hip. Instead of catching it like Naruto predicted, Kakashi lets go of Naruto's arm, which causes him to float for a moment. The silver-haired man grabs Naruto's leg instead, whirls him around, and tosses him into the bushes at high speed. Naruto doesn't leap out to challenge him again. Maybe Sasuke and Sakura will give a better challenge? How am I supposed to get a bell if Naruto can't even hit him? Sakura is on the cusp of a panic attack when Naruto lands roughly next to her. Ow! You're giving away my spot. Sakura hissed at him. Naruto scowled. At least I tried to get a bell. You just gonna lay here all day? At least I try to see how much of a chance we have. I'll have a better chance than you if I wait for him to come to me. The tall boy considered the chance of capturing Kakashi by leading him into a trap, but saw a flaw immediately. We're the ones that need to get the bells, not the other way around. We? Sakura's whisper is mocking. Already giving up and begging for my help? Naruto lips curl into an annoyed sneer. We'd have a better chance against a damn Jonin, and I don't want to go back to the academy, do you? Sakura made her own consideration. If she could get both bells, she could just give one to Sasuke instead of Naruto. Fine, we'll try once. Sakura looks trepidatious as she readies to get to her feet, but Naruto pulls her back to the ground. What now? Naruto nods forwards through the bushes. Look, Sasuke's going for the bells. Let's watch and make a plan before we strike. They watch as Sasuke throws a kunai from Kakashi's other side. The kunai cuts through a rope and sends multiple more kunai from a spring wire trap out of the trees. Guess he wasn't idly watching. Naruto approved, spotting Sasuke's Sharingan, which probably helped the precision of the throw. Sharingan out already? Kakashi calls him out on it too. Sasuke doesn't wait for Kakashi to dodge the kunai before engaging him in taijutsu. His attempt isn't as fast or spectacular as Naruto's, but he seemingly maneuvers Kakashi into standing still for a second. He weaves hand signs before Kakashi turns around. Katan, Gokakyu no Jutsu. A Genin using a Katan Jutsu? Kakashi could feel the impressive chakra emit. Sasuke watched as he cooked the Jonin, but his wishful thinking is deflated by a puff of smoke, showing the Kawarimi no Jutsu. He is immediately thrown around like Naruto was and goes back into hiding. Kakashi is almost surprised when a storm of shuriken are flung at him from two different parts of the foliage. Naruto is behind him and wraps his arms around Kakashi, holding him in place for the shuriken. That is what actually surprises him. Where were the other shuriken coming from? He lets the shuriken hit him, while his real self observes from the branches. He spotted two Narutos, one approaching in tandem with Sakura and the other holding down his Kage Bunshin. It seemed Naruto knew some valuable ninjutsu as well. Naruto blocks Kakashi's Kage Bunshin from protecting the bells, and Sakura rushed in for the take. Yes, I have them. Sakura cheers, before they disappear with a poof in her hand. Huh. Too bad. Kakashi's clone dispels in the same way. Not bad. The real Kakashi thought. He wondered if they were starting to catch on. He watched as Sasuke approached his other prospective teammates. We need to work together. We can decide who gets the bells later. Naruto immediately agrees. Kakashi is too strong. There's no way we can fight him alone or 2-on-1. Sakura is all too happy to agree with Sasuke, but internally frets at the thought of Sasuke giving a bell to Naruto. Interesting. Kakashi mutters before finding somewhere else at ground level to stand and wait. Kakashi is leaning against a tree next to a beautiful river when they find him again. You found me. I was wondering if you were going to give up. Naruto appears to be alone, but is backed up by 4 other selves. They all rush Kakashi. Kakashi's senses are quick enough to keep track of the real Naruto in the mess of Kage Bunshin, and takes down each clone swiftly. While he is distracted, Sasuke arrives and attempts another Gokakyu while Naruto was still dangerously close. Kakashi internally disapproves of the tactic or putting a teammate at risk. They'd have to do better than that. Kakashi vanishes and reappears in the tree, watching the scorching fireball decimate the ground and force Naruto to cartwheel back. While in the tree, he is met by what he is beginning to understand as the only thing Sakura can currently do, thrown shuriken until she runs out. Disappointing, Kakashi says, loud enough for all 3 to hear. He lazily weaves some signs of his own, creating a whip of water, then grabs Naruto by the neck and drags him into the river. He vanishes again and places Sakura under a Jinjutsu, causing her to scream at whatever nightmare he'd concocted. Sasuke's eyes roam the opening in a panic, and he is suddenly pulled into the ground with only his head sticking out. You 3 are running out of time. Kakashi pulls out a book and walks away. Sasuke is the only one that can scowl at him. Naruto looks like a drowned cat when he reunites with his fellow Genin prospects. He digs Sasuke out of the ground and dispels the Jinjutsu that Sakura is under. Kakashi is only using as much power as he needs to stop each of us from getting the bells. He reveals, pulling his wet hair out of his face. He's pushing us to get them, but he's a Jonin for a reason. I don't think there's any way we can actually get the bells at all, and if he wanted us to get them, then one of us would have one by now. Sasuke nods, seeing that Naruto may be onto something. The test probably isn't about getting the bells then. He lied to get us to compete for them. There's a hidden meaning that he's letting us uncover on our own. But what haven't we tried yet? Sasuke asks pointedly. Maybe a plan. Sakura suggests nervously. We keep throwing ourselves at him, and it's not working. Naruto nods to the suggestion and offers more of his own input. We all attacked together, and it looked like we were getting in each other's way to him. I think we need to show him that we actually can work together, not just that we're willing to. Any ideas? He's just standing there. Sakura offers up a simple plan, but both Naruto and Sasuke were frustrated and beyond caring about how simple it was. The goal was to get Kakashi to pass them, not to get the bells. The sun is getting dangerously low, and the 3 Genin steel themselves. Their next attack is swift. The remainder of their shuriken are weaved into ninja wire in an attempt to capture him and send a fireball at him. He escapes easily. Kakashi notices that a clone of Naruto is guarding each of Sakura and Sasuke's backs, as well as one for Naruto himself. Clearly a prevention method to stop Kakashi from taking them by surprise at the rear. Every time he dodges, they push him into another trap of logs, taijutsu assault, or ninjutsu. Kakashi weaves through them all before he is body slammed by the exhausted genin. It's enough to surprise him, and his arms and legs are held tightly by Sasuke, Sakura, and their clone bodyguards. He lets the real Naruto swipe the bells this time instead of protesting the teamwork. Their temporary reward for their efforts. Ah, you got them. Kakashi smiles menacingly. Now make your choice. Who's going back to the academy, Naruto? That's up to you. Naruto retorts, and he drops the bells at his feet. All of us, or none. Kakashi gives a genuine laugh, and it carries his happiness easily across the sunset grounds. I guess I have no choice. Kakashi's pose is ridiculously dramatic. You pass. All three students slump in relief. Well done, you three. You're the very first Team 7 under my tutelage. However, Naruto is struck with a sense of foreboding. A water rope lunges out of the river and dunks Naruto a second time. Blurblr. Naruto chokes on the cold water. That was for giving me the scare of my life yesterday. Meet me at the Hokage's office in the morning. Kakashi vanishes in a puff of smoke. Truly, there is no end to conflict in the cursed shinobi world. Naruto swears and thinks on how he'll one-up Kakashi next time. Naruto stretches as soon as he closes the door of his apartment and immediately makes his way over to the kitchen for some dinner. He really should have known that Madara wouldn't give him any useful advice on a test like that. But that was his grandfather's way. Teach him to learn on his own instead of spoon-feeding him the answers. He grins at the thought of finally going on official missions. The hidden Uchiha does some light reading in Fuinjutsu theory for a short while before practicing his sensing once more before bed. Sakura only had time to eat her mother's cooking before passing out and needing to be carried to bed by her father. Sleep tight, baby girl. Kizashi tucks her in lovingly. Sasuke has a harder time sleeping, despite his exhaustion. His excitement had overwritten his tiredness. One step close to you, Ni-san.